Test. 1, 2, 3, 6, 12. Hello, numbers, words. Hope you guys are all doing well this evening. Bear with me for a second while I finish getting set up here. Good to see you, Saria. I'm glad you got in the ritual before we got started. This is appropriate, especially since tonight we're going to be talking a bit about stars and predictions and prophecy and fate and stuff like that. So this is going to be a bit of a variety stream. There's a bunch of stuff that I want to try to, maybe not this for now. I want to try to go over, want to try to talk about over the course of the evening. But also I want to be transparent that I do want to do some more research on certain things, and so there are some things that I want to go over tonight, and then there will be definitely a part 2 on Sunday. If you are tuning in for a one of our scheduled, like regularly scheduled gaming streams, don't worry, we will be returning to gaming shortly. Next Thursday, I think I'll have a stream on Zelda, if not Zelda, the new Star Fox or something like that. Star Fox, not Star Forks. Jesus Christ. But full disclosure, as I'm sure you'll notice, I am sick again. And so I didn't really think I was going to be able to give very intelligent commentary while also playing a game. We'll see if I'll even be able to give anything resembling intelligent commentary even while not playing a game. That remains to be seen. But that being said, Sage put out a video recently on Naruto scaling, or specifically on Naruto versus Dragon Ball. And of course, you know, if you're going up against a verse like Dragon Ball, which has like planet busters pretty early on in the series, especially if you're just confining it to Dragon Ball Z, rather than going all the way back to the initial series. But like, regardless of whether you start at like OG Dragon Ball Z, or even Super, you have characters who are doing some pretty crazy stuff, right? So to get Naruto characters up to that level, you're going to need to talk about stuff like light speed scaling, universal scaling, even planetary, solar system, stellar stuff, which, as you know, if you've been at this channel before, and if so, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us again. And you will soon discover, if you are new here, which, by the way, thank you for giving the channel a shot, that I have strong objections to those positions. Not because I am philosophically opposed to any given verse having a character that's light speed or universal or whatever else. Like, Gurren Lagann, right? If you've seen that show, you know that, like, spoilers, I guess, although the show's been out for a long time, so, I mean, hopefully this won't ruin anybody's experience of the show. But basically, at the end of that show, characters are piloting this giant mech that is, I believe, like multiple galaxies in size, and it's just picking up galaxies and throwing them around like shuriken, right? So I don't think anybody should be too skeptical of that and be like, oh, well, no, you know, like, I don't see where the room is there to be like, well, no, technically these people are only island level or whatever, right? Like, it's very, very clearly cosmically scaled, right? So I just think that we should let the evidence lead us wherever it does, and we should follow that wherever we can, and not lead the evidence in favor of our perspective. So that's really my goal. My hope is to just kind of talk about these meta arguments that are coming up again, and also just to talk about how we talk to each other as power scalers. In addition to talking about Sage's video, which we're going to start tonight, but, you know, it's like over an hour long, and even the section just on Naruto scaling is like 45 minutes long, so we're not going to get through it all tonight. But I wanted to get that conversation at least kickstarted, and then I also wanted to talk about a conversation that I had recently with Eon, otherwise known as L Eon. I think that's how you pronounce that, right? L Eon. Who is a scaler that I've mentioned before. Like, I catch his streams when I can. He's a pretty gracious dude. He's a pretty, you know, nice and chill person, easy to talk to. Well, for the most part, when you catch him, like, one-on-one, especially, he is super chill, super easy to talk to. He doesn't hold a grudge. he gets very, very passionate and very worked up, and I think that sometimes I can personally interpret that as like being yelled at because I'm just a sensitive little boy. But at the end of the day, I'm a big softie. I'm the Ralsei in the party, right? Um, if you played Deltarune, you'll understand. But at the same time, we had a rather heated discussion earlier this week, and I wasn't super thrilled about it. But then we reconnected since then, and as far as I'm concerned, we're totally cool. He seems totally cool with everything too. But I've been thinking a lot about that conversation and about what went wrong, what I could have done better, and it was really disheartening at the end of that stream that you know, Eon said that he was gonna like quit power scaling streaming. Now he doesn't seem to have done this because he was on stream today, which is great. I would be very upset if I felt like I, just due to my own stubbornness or curiosity or however you want to phrase it, that I was even a small part of discouraging somebody from, you know, participating in a discussion about something that they like. And that goes for Sage and Noodles and whoever else. Like I can disagree extremely passionately with somebody, but my goal is never to say, and because you're bad, fuck off and leave the community and never come back unless you've done some like really sketchy shit like we've talked about before certain channels have, where it gets into some personal stuff or it gets into some like community abuse stuff. That's one thing, but in terms of just the argumentation itself, I don't want people to feel like they're discouraged from sharing their opinions. I think we need more open and healthy discussion and back and forth and stuff, and like my hope is that eventually we'll be able to like reconcile, share our viewpoints, and we all help each other better understand stuff. As much as a nitpicking, skeptical prick that I'm sure I sound to a lot of people, and I'm willing to own that. I've gotten that feedback enough that I think it's appropriate for me to actually listen. So I understand. In my head at least, I am trying to help. I'm trying to be like, here are the pitfalls, here are the potential mistakes, here are the potential misunderstandings, and I'm also asking for help. If I disagree with you and I'm taking the time to engage with you, my hope is that, like my win condition, my victory condition or whatever, is that the two of us will put our heads together and we'll figure it out and we'll both come out with better understanding. Now, I understand that can be hard to believe when I'm just saying, no, 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 you're wrong, skeptic, 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 blah, blah, blah. So I get it. I can be a lot. I understand that, and I accept that feedback. But I do want to touch base and talk about a lot of this stuff. So briefly, we're going to be talking about constellations. We're going to be talking about Toneri. We're going to be talking about Urashiki. We're going to be talking about Luffy and the slow beams and the Foxy arc in One Piece, and just talking about Naruto discourse in general. I do want to talk about Toneri quite a bit, but unfortunately, it's tough to find clips with some of the stuff I'm talking about because of the rather stringent copyright shit. You guys have seen this on the stream before, where I'll try to play a clip from Crunchyroll or even from The Last or whatever, and the stream will just get shut down. So over the next few days, in anticipation of the Sunday stream, I'm going to get some of those clips prepared and have them available offline. So if I mention a quote of something, or I'm like, hey, Toneri says this, that, or the other thing, and I don't show it on stream, feel free to call me out on that, and I will have the goal of bringing any of the missing evidence, so to speak, up on Sunday so y'all can see it. And if there's something that I missed, please hold me accountable to it. I don't want you guys to feel like I'm not giving you the context you deserve. And I will do my best to come equipped with all that on Sunday. But anyway, let me stop yapping for a brief moment and catch up with people. Thank you for stopping by. Sorry, I'm really sorry to hear that you're not you're not doing well. You flu. Well, hopefully with the weekend coming up, you'll have a chance to relax a little bit and recuperate. I certainly hope you have some time for self-care. I am currently not feeling very great myself, so I'm sure you'll notice. So I send you my sympathies, and I send you well wishes for a speedy recovery. And maybe just stay away from Netflix Avatar if you don't want something to drive you further up the wall. Realman, how's it going? It's good to see you. I sent you a message about the thing from earlier this week. No hard feelings or anything. Just wanted you to be aware of stuff. But as far as I'm concerned, it's water under the bridge and all that. I think it was probably just like a rogue incident, like a rogue random event. I don't blame anybody or anything like that. It's just like, for those who aren't aware, like a random person showed up in our Discord and was like, hello, my name is Arian. It was like, hi, what's up with this name? And then I looked at their YouTube and I was like, and also, what's up with this massive fucking swastika banner on your fucking channel? And they said, oh yeah, that no big deal. I'm just a neo-Nazi. I'm like, okay, I don't understand what it is about my channel that would have ever given anybody the impression that I'd be okay with that. But I guess just for the record, I'm not. And interrogating me on my own personal religious beliefs or whatever is not like a way to get around that. Just FYI to anybody listening. So, hey, live your best life. It's hard for me to imagine your best life involves rampant bigotry, but you do you. Just do it somewhere else, please and thank you. Uh, that was so random. I was having such a nice night too. Um, but anyway, Ryoman says Zoro versus Sasuke, more complexity, depth, and psychological realism. Zoro destroys. Honestly, I think that personally, I feel like you might be onto something, and I think that uh, Sasuke. I don't want to comment too much because I don't know all that much about Zoro yet, but Sasuke I think is a fan favorite, and so I think his conflict as represented in the series winds up getting look. I don't want to like gaslight anybody. I don't want to downplay anybody's perspective, but I feel like I'm missing something, I guess is one way to put it, about Sasuke. I just don't get the appeal of him as a character past a certain point in the series. He seems incredibly naive, incredibly gullible, and incredibly immature in the way that he takes out his own personal failures on the other fucking um I lost my train of thought, sorry. On the other people around him. Now maybe that's the point, right? Like he is in a way, I guess you could say, like the final boss, the final villain of the story. So that's something. And you know, that's one thing. I'm getting a little distracted by the chats coming in, trying to focus. But yeah, at the end of the day, I don't really find him all that compelling in terms of his emotional development. And after a certain point in Shippuden, he really falls off for me as a character. So, but other people seem to think that he's really deep and really complex, and so I don't want to discount that and say just because I didn't see it doesn't mean it's not there, right? So, please feel free to, what's the term for it? Like to red pill me on Sasuke? Is that the right term? Like to get me to wake up and see the light about why he's such a great character? Because I specifically referring to the War arc. I think he's great in part one. But yeah, Goku has wall level durability. Okay, we're starting off spicy tonight for sure. Hey there, everyone. Smart. How's it going? Hope you're doing well. Yeah, I think we chatted briefly on Eon's stream tonight or earlier today, right? For the record, if I wind up ever getting spicy about universal stuff, please don't take it personally. I'm gonna try not to. I'm gonna try not to be like act like a dickhead and then just say, hey, don't take it personally, right? Like that's not fair of me. But as you probably know already, Universal and Lightspeed stuff is kind of a sticking point for me. Um, but I think I forget what we were talking about exactly. I think it was the moon. The thing about the moon is that if you watch through the last, there's a few scenes, and I can give you time codes for this. Although I can't show the last on stream because of the copyright shit. But I can get the clips for you for Sunday, and I can also give you time codes. And if you want to if you want to join the Discord if you're not already in there, like I can also just share the shit there. Anyway, all this is just to say that like there's a bunch of scenes where Naruto like where you see like an attack punch through the surface of the moon, where you see characters like flying around on birds and stuff, or like Sai's painted birds. Um, eh, what's her name? Hinata looks to the Byakugan and says X, Y, or Z thing is like 20 clicks away, and those correspond to a kilometer's value that you can look up, etc., etc. So like there are a lot of individual points that you can use to try to give an overall metric of the internal size of the moon. The way that it looks like to me is that at the very center is the Tenseigan, that is inside of a sphere, that is at the center of like this moon and orb thing, that is within the artificial sun, and that has a bunch of like floating castles and Toneri's palace and shit in it. And then the artificial sun is in the center of the giant hollowed out space that has like lakes and forests and trees and civilization. Not well, trees obviously in the forest, but then like ruins of civilizations, etc., etc. And there seems to have been at least two different nations of people. Now I don't know how big a nation is, right? But like there were two warring factions that fought each other inside the moon. So when I say the moon is hollow and it's a different size than it is in Naruto, what I mean is not like I'm not putting forward a specific numerical value, but I'm just saying that like it's not safe to assume that like its mass is interchangeable with the mass of the Earth because of all sorry, with the mass of Luna, with the mass of the moon in our universe because of all of those different variables. I think that at one point, Dr. Strangle, aka Acolyte's Epilogue, put together some calcs for that. Acolyte, if you do show up later and you have those available and you'd be okay with me sharing them, I could probably either share them here or in the server, where I think he had tried to piece together some of the dimensions for that. But yeah, based on all that stuff, I think it's at least fair to say that there is a large, hollowed out portion of the moon, and it's large enough to incorporate multiple cities. And because of that, it's not safe to assume that the mass is equivalent to that of our Luna. How much smaller it is remains to be seen. I think that's where folks who are equipped to do calcs and measurements and stuff like that, which fucking I should fucking learn at this point, right? Like I've been talking about this for a year. I should just learn how to do the math. It's probably not that hard, but I have like my sleep paralysis demon is just the quadratic formula basically. Like I'm allergic to math and I need to get over that shit. So one of these days. Anyway, moving right along, anti-spiral, the spiral versus the anti-spiral stuff that's from Gurren Lagann, right? That I think that show is like peak emotional crit, right? Like one of the driving forces of that series is just believing in yourself and having belief, literally and figuratively spiral into power increases and overlaps, which is really fucking cool. Um, I feel like it's I don't know why I have like a real soft spot for moments where characters just like become overcome with emotion and rage and channel that into attacks and stuff. I mean, like I'm sure that's not exactly a rare thing, right? Like if you watch Goku go for Super Saiyan for the first time and you don't feel something, you're probably you're probably a robot. Um, but I mean, obviously, I'm joking, right? Like it's subjective, but there's something about like that righteous fury, um, and all of the pent up emotions. Mob Psycho, like that's the whole point of that show, right? Is that that character is sort of emotionally repressed, is one way to put it, or just emotionally very calm and muted for much of the series. But then his superpowers involve him getting in touch with his emotions and expressing them very overtly in a big sort of cataclysmic display, which is really really cool. So I like that shit, and I think that Gurren Lagann does a really good job of like epitomizing that, for lack of a better phrase. Um, Toneri is great. I totally agree. Eon was just stressed. Yeah, at a certain point, I was like, I took myself out of the conversation, A, because I didn't really see it being productive, but also because, like, Eon just didn't sound like he was having fun. And so, in a way, like, I was kind of sad that he was taking a step back, supposedly, but also I was kind of glad, if that doesn't sound too contradictory, because, like, he seems like a genuinely nice dude, and he seems like somebody who genuinely cares a lot about One Piece and has put in a lot of effort. Like you see all the scans and shit that he has available. He knows a lot. But regardless of whether he's right about this or wrong about that, like at the end of the day, he just like sounded super stressed and not having fun. And to be honest, as much as I enjoyed venting about the noodles fucking stream a couple of weeks ago, and it was fun to just vent about that stuff. Listening back to it, I was so worked up. I was so like frustrated, and there's times where honestly, like no disrespect to Warlick, like I've been really enjoying our conversations. If you're listening in on this, like let's please keep excuse me, having them, or anybody else, like One Smart, you're included as well. Anybody else that I've had disagreements with, like I genuinely get something out of them, and I learn things, and it's stimulating and it's interesting, and also it's like, you know this is not your guys' fault. You don't know this necessarily, but like I've been I feel like I've done my research. I feel like I've done a good job of demonstrating the solidity of my perspective. Doesn't mean I'm perfect, doesn't mean I'm not making mistakes, but like I've tried sincerely. And when I put that shit forward and it just doesn't go anywhere, or I get accused of being disingenuous or just being agenda driven or just being skeptical or whatever, it's like adding insult to injury, right? It's like, well, first of all, this, like, I'm trying to help people better understand stuff, and that doesn't seem to be working as well as I would like it to. Like, obviously, people here in our community, like, we get each other, but I'm trying to help like more people. I'm trying to help people who, from my perspective, misunderstand things to understand them better, and that doesn't seem to be going very far, um, in terms of my persuasive ability or whatever. And then there's also this like accusation of like insincerity, and it's just like you keep fighting that same battle over and over and over again for years, and it's just like so fucking draining. So I get it, and like you guys are super chill. Like nobody really has ever bothered me or stressed me out in any of our chats. Like we've never really had anything spicy that I can recall happen in the stream. The spiciest thing was that random Nazi person showing up and then like he was gone, like, or they were gone in like a few minutes, right? So, and it's not like they were making any arguments anyway. They were just being an asshole. Um, so, like what? What do I really have to whine about? Compared to what Eon has to go through every single time he goes on stream with people like me coming in and being like, no, 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 you're wrong about this and this doesn't work. Like I get it, like I get it. And so I'm gonna try to take that to heart, and I'm gonna try to think about going forward, like, is there a way that I can still try to advocate for the stuff that I believe in, but do so in a way that's more inviting and inclusive? Because like I that's what I really want, and I feel like maybe I haven't, like I could be doing better at that, I guess is one way to put it. So I'm trying to learn from that whole conversation. Um, let's see, Realman. Oh, sorry, I missed a message from Realman before. Better written anti-spiral or pyramid head. Oh, interesting. Um, I don't know that I would compare the two in a linear way like that, because I think it's like apples and origins, or fuck, apples and orange. Fine, it's apples and origins. Yeah, that's what it is now. Um, I think they're just like they're two. I see them as being two sides of the same coin, sort of, um, but also representing different facets. Like, it seems to me like the anti-spiral is more of an existential threat and reflection of humanity overall, whereas Pyramid Head is a reflection of the protagonist, sure, but it's also like a deliberately concocted manifestation of his own very specific guilt and perspective on himself, as opposed to anything inherent. Does it make sense? Like, if I remember, I haven't seen Gurren Lagann in a few years, but like, if I remember correctly, the anti-spiral was more of a representation of like the antithesis to the nature of humanity to grow and expand and develop, whereas Pyramid Head is more a representation of the distorted view that James holds of himself. And so I feel like they serve very different purposes. It's kind of hard to talk about Pyramid Head without talking about James himself. Maybe it's impossible. So I think that they just don't fall into the same category. In terms of which is more compelling, I'm biased towards, Silent Hill. So I'll say Pyramid Head, but it's not like I'm gonna fucking die on that hill. Um, oh yeah, sorry, you're referring to Arian. Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, yeah. So I'm looking at your exchange with Ryomen, and look, I was talking to my partner about this a couple days like after that happened, and she asked a question which is really good, really well thought out, which is, do you think? I'm paraphrasing what she said, but basically, do you think there's a missed opportunity there, right? Like, somebody came into our community and had beliefs that were very different from ours. And my response was to just be like, fuck off. And I just banned them without any conversation. And I stand by that, because at the end of the day, like, our server is not a place for that. Um, I don't even really want it to become like a political debate server. Like, if you guys want to talk about politics, we do sometimes. We talk about world events, but like, I don't know if I even want it to like have a politics channel or anything like that, because it's just not really what I made it for. There's nothing wrong with having those discussions, but I kind of made a space for like, okay, when we come into this space, we all kind of agree we're gonna chill and we're gonna talk about fun stuff, and then if you want to talk about more serious stuff, that's totally fine, but maybe we do it somewhere else. That was kind of my hope for it. So I want to maintain those vibes. That being said, if I want to see less Nazism in the world, I'm not gonna accomplish that by just pushing people away and not listening to them and not trying to change their minds. So there is an argument, I think, that just being callous and immediately rejecting the person without even talking to them at all wasn't cool. And I do actually kind of feel that way. I think if I were in a different mindset and if I had more time or whatever, that what I could have done or should have done would be to reach out to the person via DMs and say, look, not in the server, but let's talk about this and let's see if I can change your mind on a couple of things. That would have been more mature. So I acknowledge that. And I think it's a missed opportunity. But also, I made the decision that I did because I want to preserve the vibe that the server has, and I don't like. I'm not gonna debate people about anti-Semitism or like bigotry or whatever in the server. Like, if somebody comes into the server and they're homophobic, they're gone. Like, just they're gone. And if they want to, you guys want to, I don't know, hear me debate a homophobe or a bigot or something, and talk about that publicly, I'd be happy to, right? But I'm not gonna. I've decided that it's not gonna be there because that's not the place for that. I'm happy to commit to speaking to people one on one and trying to reconcile differences, but it's just not gonna be in the server because I don't think that's the place for that. So hopefully that seems fair. Um, so in another world, we would all be friends despite our differences, but also there's a growing rise of fascism and bigotry in the country I live in, which I hesitate to say is my country anymore. Um, I made the mistake of opening up Facebook, which just don't even do that anymore. But I was looking at like the various pride parades and stuff that have been happening, and just the level of hatred and nastiness and hostility. I'm not even gonna quote some of the stuff, but it like broke my heart, honestly. Um, oh, there was just a little simulated comment that flew by. That's nice. Um, it is just like heartbreaking and disgusting, and like people mocking folks who were killed in hate crimes, and just like I see more and more of it all the time. So I'm not gonna entertain it in a public space like that. I'm sorry, it's not. I can't fucking do that. It's gross. Um, anyway, I think we can all move on. Just a little blip, but nothing worth losing sleep over. One Smart says Sasuke is way too much for Zoro. I don't know where Zoro scales, but is Zoro the guy who has the room ability? Because I think Eon was talking about that, yeah? And from what he described in his video, that seemed pretty broken. That being said, sorry for the gross drinking noises if those came across on stream. But, I mean, to me, it kind of comes down to Genjutsu. I think Genjutsu is so broken when it works correctly, meaning that it's so powerful and it's so hard to deal with. And I do tend to agree that Genjutsu works cross-verse. If you disagree, that's fine. I don't mind. Like, I'm not going to try to prove it one way or another. I personally think it does work. But if you don't, that's fine. But if it does, then I think, like, a lot of, based on what I've read so far, look, like, just reading through Skypiea in One Piece, I think Enel, or Eneru, however you say his name, is probably, like I was talking to Eon about this earlier today, Enel's probably, like, soloing the war arc. Like, I think some of the Edo Tensei would do okay against him, but most of the people before Sage of Six Paths levels of power show up, Enel can just drop one of those heavenly almighty orb things, whatever the fuck they're called, and be done, right? Like, eyeball scaling it, I have no problem putting that shit on Ten-Tail's Biju Bomb level. Obviously, that's not a precise calc. You don't have to believe me on that, but that was just the vibe that I got from that. So, but still, if like Itachi looks at that motherfucker and Genjutsu works, and they cross, like, not even like look deep lovingly into each other's eyes, like their visual axes cross for a fraction of a second, he's toast, as far as I can tell. So it doesn't matter. Like, that's the thing about Genjutsu, right? It's like, it doesn't matter how strong or fast you are. There's that quote from the data books, which take it with a grain of salt, but like, even a body made of iron or as fast as the speed of light or whatever can do nothing in the face of the Tsukuyomi, right? That phrasing is hyperbolic, but it's there for a reason. The reason is to indicate how fucking cracked it is. So Yeah, I do think that it probably comes down to that. Um, Sasuke has two times less psychological layers than Zoro does, is far less subtle. He's definitely not very subtle. Whitebeard versus Shanks, Whitebeard extreme diffs. I still haven't gone to those characters yet, or if I have, I haven't internalized them, so sorry about that. Same with Mihawk. So basically, I read through chapters 1 to 30, and then I jumped ahead, which I know I shouldn't, but like I was trying to research the um, scaling around the Long Ring, Long Island arc. So I jumped ahead to like 265. I read through Skypiea, Long Ring, Long Island, and then started on is it Water 7 where they go to get the ship fixed. And I'm like I think on chapter 320 now. So yeah. Oh, Law has room, not zero. I'm sorry, I fucked that up. One Smart says, I challenge Eon all the time. Yeah, yeah, I see you in there. I see you, and you've challenged me before. And like, look, just for the record, I appreciate it. Like, you and I don't always see eye to eye on stuff, but I've never felt like genuinely frustrated or upset or anything about our discussions. And what's more, like, I hope that this comes across in my replies to your comments. But like, I see you there. You take the time to think things out and to respond in detail and to share your thoughts. And like, I know what it's like to put a lot of time and effort into a comment and just somebody like responds to that and it's like, oh, lol, I didn't read that shit, or like I'm not reading all that. Like, I want you to know that I do read the shit, even if it takes me a billion years to respond, and I appreciate the effort. Like at the end of the day, we could violently disagree about whatever, but I appreciate the effort and I appreciate the engagement is the word I'm looking for. Um, so yeah, I'll try to advocate for the information as best I can. And if you're there to challenge that and to keep the discussion going, I do really appreciate that. Hey there, Ursa. It's good to see you. Sorry, I saw your message and I just got distracted. Yes, there's a server. I can post a link. There should be a link in the video description, but I think sometimes I forget to maintain it. I should set up a bot to like spam it every once in a while. Let me see if I can do this. Invite to server. Uh, oh, because the link expires in 30 days. Okay. Edit invite link expire after. Oh, expire never. Okay. Generate a new link. Copy. Okay. So try this, and if that works, then I will update the link on the channel. That's probably what it is. It's in the channel description, or like on the channel main page or whatever. But I might need to update it with this new link because I don't know if the other one still works. Um, and it looks like you just appeared, so welcome to the server. Sent you a little wave. Thank you so much for joining us. And you joined on the perfect day because I just spent way too much time at work when I should have been doing productive, going through and adding little beautiful emoticons to all the different channels. So please enjoy. Um, Ariane once debated somebody on if Hither, I think I know what you mean by that, is alive or not. I would love to know how that went down and who won, because wow, that's fascinating. Please give me the lore there. Law has room not zero. Okay, I think in equal stats, end of series Zoro would beat Sasuke since HD would most likely have future sight. Um, since he would most likely have future sight. Well, sorry, I'm a little confused. Can you clarify? Is Zoro the one you think has future sight? I'm not as familiar with his abilities so far. All I know is that he like is good with swords. He blitzed some chumps who tried to take over his ship, but then he got his ass kicked by that like ice dude, the admiral or whatever his name is. Um, so Ursa, you're saying NL is not building level. Are you talking about you're talking about the same character? Because what I was referring to, and of course, like, I'm still just getting into One Piece for the first time, so I'm definitely not gonna like die on any hills out here. But yeah, no, thank you. Um, so like, it was in this arc, right? It's like this dude in his ship, and he's like casting down these thunderbolts, which are kind of like, they remind me of Kieran. They might not be quite as destructive individually of Kieran, right? But like, he's just sort of casually spamming them down. This is in chapter, what are we at? Like 280 something, like 286, right? Um, is this the flashback? Might be. Yeah. So, but then like he shows up with these giant orbs and he starts like sending them down to the Earth. Yeah, it should be around here, right? Let me see if I can find it. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, this one, okay? This fucking thing. The last one, like, nearly wiped out a big chunk of the country. So are you saying he's not building level and durability? Because if he can just do this, and I mean, like, he doesn't even seem to be fatigued. He's just kind of casually doing this. And, I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to see this guy's building level. But please let me know if I'm missing something, right? Like this, too. Now, granted, I don't know what his durability is, right? Like, I'm just saying in terms of AP, though, or DC. Like, Kingdom Comes, what is what it's called, right? Seems to me like he should be at least Biju Bomb level with his DC output. Maybe Ten Tails is too generous, but, I mean, like, does a lot of fucking damage with that first one. And then he keeps on saying, like, I can make it bigger. Now, I guess I don't need to belabor the point. But yeah, please feel free to give me more context there if you'd like. Zoro will have future sight in the future, most likely in equal stats. It helps a lot. Oh, I see. Yeah. So, like, I mean, we've seen how big of a boost the Sharingan can be. Like, two characters who are otherwise equal. I mean, yeah, like, look at that shit, right? Two characters who are otherwise equal can potentially, like, the tide of the battle can change drastically just by one of them getting the Sharingan. And we see that in the first Final Valley fight with Sasuke and Naruto, right? So I do think any sort of future sight or prediction whatsoever does really, really help, like, a lot. Like, even, like, a tiny head start can change so much. So I think since we're on the subject of, whatchamacallit, just checking in a couple things here. Okay. So, since we're on the subject of One Piece, why don't we talk for like 5 or 10 more minutes about the Eon discussion, and then we can talk a bit about Sage's video. And then, whenever they start streaming, so like, I'm probably going to be streaming myself until like 9:30 10. It's almost 8 o'clock now, where I am. And then, Walkie Talkie are going to be streaming later tonight, and I'm going to jump on and talk to those guys for a little bit. So, I'm guessing that'll probably be around like 10 p.m. EST. But in the meantime, so yeah, let's talk a little bit about One Piece real quick, and then we'll jump into the Sage video stuff, because honestly, the two topics kind of dovetail pretty nicely. So I mentioned that I had this discussion with Eon, and again, just for clarity, if you're not familiar with Eon, I would recommend checking out his channel. Let me just take a second. I did that thing where I open up a million tabs and don't remember which one I was specifically looking for. He's on here somewhere, and I want to make sure that I point you to the channel, and then we'll talk about all this constellation stuff too.
Hello, fellow. But who are you?
Okay. This was a mistake. Where are we? Okay, yeah, okay. So this, shut up for a second. This particular stream over here, this particular user, Leon, check it out. He made an open, basically made the server open for anybody who wants to talk about like Naruto or One Piece and sort of challenge him, right? He says he wanted the smoke. So I hopped in, and I wrote, as I usually do, a long ass fucking like essay for him. And to his credit, he basically derailed his own stream to entertain me. So I appreciate that. If you want to see the full discussion, it goes from about here to, was I still going here? It was a long time, but it was kind of drawn out because it was over text, so I had to take time to like review things. So you can see the full discussion, and then I think I like quit somewhere around here. The gist of the discussion was light speed scaling, and for whatchamacallit, for One Piece, and specifically for Foxy's beams. And I think personally, in review, although I'm not happy about like maybe how I ended the conversation, I think I did a pretty good job of laying out my arguments. You guys are welcome to listen through it and see if you agree. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. That's totally fine. But in review, I'm trying to identify like what I could have done better, or like where maybe I failed to get across certain points. And That's kind of what I want to talk about because it's relevant to the Sage stuff as well. Ursa says, okay, so as far as I know, NL should roughly scale to characters like Luffy in durability and physicality, albeit weaker. Luffy's bare minimum low town level by virtue of ripping through Alabasta while a part of a city in Alabasta. Okay, so is Alabasta actually like made out of the substance Alabaster? Um, Actually, I'm revealing my ignorance here. I don't remember if Alabaster is just like a description or a yeah, okay. Smooth translucent, usually white mineral. Okay, yeah. I know in like fucking Elden Ring, it's there's Alabaster and Onyx Lords, so I assumed that like Onyx it was a type of mineral or rock, but I wasn't sure if it was just like a description. Yeah. So anyway, let's talk about this real quick. No one scales to Pell, so no, not town level. I'm sorry, can you remind me what a Pell is? Was I feel like I've seen that name recently, but I'm not sure. Okay, so if you're not familiar with One Piece, which I'm still learning a lot about, so take everything I'm going to say with a big ass grain of salt. In chapter 309, there's this character called Foxy who's a pirate, and he has set up a race between some of the members of his crew and the members of Luffy's crew, the protagonists, the Straw Hat Pirates, right? Although I don't know, are they called the Straw Hats now? I think they are. Anyway, so some of them are racing, and they are in this little makeshift boat, and they get very, very close to the finish line. But right as they get close to the finish line, something happens. They get struck with what they think is a beam of light, right? They get hit with a beam of light, and it slows them down, and so they can't go through the finish line in time. This is because Foxy is cheating. Foxy is using an ability called the slow beam, and he basically casts this beam at them. If the beam hits them, it slows them down, so this lets their competition get there first and they lose the race. Essentially what happens, right? This is chapter 309 if I didn't say that before. So what I was trying to understand as somebody who knows nothing about One Piece, the argument that Eon seemed to, I hope I'm not strawmanning here, but the argument that Eon was representing was that since this is a beam of light, characters are reacting to, perceiving, and dodging this beam, because Luffy dodges it later, and we'll get to that in a second. Therefore, Luffy is above the speed of light. Now, I really don't mind if Luffy is or isn't the speed of light. I think he objectively is based on later scaling, from what I've seen, although I'm not an expert. So I don't have a problem with the One Piece verse being speed of light, just to be very clear. I'm not out here to debunk Luffy being light speed in general. But as somebody who doesn't know a lot about the series, who's just coming in from a neutral perspective, my goal was to try to just, or nobody's truly neutral, but you know what I mean, like trying to start from a null hypothesis, I should say. I don't know whether Luffy is or isn't light speed. I have no investment in this verse to start off with, and so I just want to examine what is being said and see what conclusion I can come to based on that examination. And I try to do this for Naruto as well. So here is what I see. I see these characters paddling their boats, and I see this character seeing something that happened and saying, I saw light shoot out of his hand. So on the surface, that seems pretty straightforward, right? This character Nami is saying she saw light. Okay, well, if it was light, then it was light, right? So that's one thing that initially seems to guide us towards it just being light. The problem is that we don't actually know what this ability is yet. All we know is that it emits light in some regard, right? It involves sending out photons, I guess. It involves sending out a flash. We don't know anything about its mechanics. Blanco actually shared a really thoughtful response about this earlier today. Blanco, if you're listening, thank you for that. I do appreciate that. And some other people had responded to me on this in various channels, and I appreciate all your comments and your insight that you shared. That basically, like, if you see a bright flash that is part of someone's attack, and you say, what was that flash over there? What was that flash of light? Right? And then you go to investigate what happened. That doesn't necessarily mean that the attack itself was light speed. Like, if somebody drops a bomb on a hill near you, and you see a big flash of light, and you go to investigate it, the bomb itself, like the pressure wave or the shrapnel from the bomb, isn't necessarily moving at the speed of light, even though it emits light, right? So there's a little bit of ambiguity here, from my perspective. From my perspective, when I look at this, my reaction is I want to know more. I get that it's like, okay, well, it says light, so maybe it's light. But from my perspective, I want to know more. And I don't think that's unfair, right? And you can disagree. Tell me if you think I'm being unfair. But right now, all I want is to learn more and to not like rest on my laurels with this piece of information, so to speak. Okay, so moving on, let's see what this fucking guy's name, Foxy, what he says. Only the most important character in this discussion, right? What Foxy says. What Foxy says is, "Fehehehe, there's nothing mysterious." By the way, I love his laugh in the English dub. It's really good. "Fehehehe, there's nothing mysterious about it. Just slowpoke photons at work. What did you do to Naomi and the others? Slowpoke photons." Okay, so he identifies these things that are called, quote, slowpoke photons, unquote. Now, there's two ways to interpret this phrase as far as I can tell. He is either describing a thing that is called a slowpoke photon, and or he is describing a photon that is a subtype of a normal photon called a slowpoke photon. In other words, there is a in the like species, or in the genus, so to speak, of photons, there is a subspecies called slowpoke photon, and every slowpoke photon has all the same attributes as a regular photon, but just with some additional changes. In the same way that like all toads are frogs, but not all frogs are toads, it's the same kind of thing. But the other thing is that the other interpretation is that he's just using this term slowpoke photons as like a shorthand, as like a way of like, fuck, I need a name for this thing. It's kind of like a photon, and it makes people slow. So fuck it, I'm gonna call it a slowpoke photon, and it's not a very precise definition. Saria with her 2 a.m. milkshake. Dude, I'm jealous. First of all, that's bringing me back. I used to go, my first partner and I used to go to IHOP, which is not exactly fine dining, but like where we lived, there was an IHOP that was open 24/7. And when we were stressed and we needed to get away from shit, we would just go at like 2 or 3 in the morning and have like I forget if she would get a milkshake. I think she would. And then I would get like those grain and nut harvest pancakes with an orange juice, because I convinced myself that because it had like walnuts in it or whatever, that it was healthy. And the orange juice was also healthy because orange. But man, it was felt so rebellious and free to just like, oh, we're gonna ditch class tomorrow and we're gonna go, you know, have our all nighter at the IHOP. Ursa says you're. Sorry. One second. I'm gonna mute up for a sec while I blow my nose so you guys don't have to deal with this. 1 second. Yep, I'm really sick. Okay. Ursa says, no, you're spitting, John. It's natural to be skeptical about these things, not because FTL is impossible, but because the verse overall has to build itself over time due to the scaling. Right, yeah, that was my thing, too, is like, part of why I jumped ahead and why I'm trying to read in, like, the vicinity of these chapters is because I'm looking for other feats of characters having, like, discrete feats or anti-feats, for speed that would help put this into context, because if Luffy is already moving at the speed of light now, then if he goes up against somebody later who's the speed of light, and he's just like keeping up with that character as opposed to like turbo ultra mega blitzing him, then that means he hasn't really grown much in speed, which would be weird to me. And again, like I don't really know what I'm talking about here, but I've heard that there's a character called Kizaru who shows up later, and he eats a devil fruit, Logia, right? That basically turns him into the element of light. So he is like supposedly objectively light speed, because he's literally just light. And he has a line about like, have you ever been kicked at the speed of light or something like that, right? And what somebody told me was that Luffy initially struggles to keep up with him. So I find it difficult to reconcile him being already the speed of light here with that guy who's the speed of light later not being able to keep up with him. It doesn't make sense unless Kizaru is like faster than the speed of light. But then does that make, like, not a rhetorical question, does that make sense in light of the fact that his whole thing is that he's light? Like, does it make sense that the whole thing of his character is like, okay, I have now become an embodiment of the light element. I'm a light elemental, but I'm actually way, way faster than light. Doesn't that seem like a little bit of a contradiction there? So, again, open question, not rhetorical. And I think, to be fair, I probably won't be able to fully answer any of these questions until I've read the series, which I've kind of been dreading because it's over 1,000 chapters long. But I'll get there sooner or later. Get there sooner or later. Anyway, one sec. I got a notification. Just want to make sure. Okay. Cool. So there's nothing mysterious about it. Just slowpoke photons at work. Okay. So let's see what Foxy then says. Right. He refers to these slowfuck poketons as an as yet undiscovered particle, which is, people like really hang on this. Maybe I don't need to hang on this phrasing so much. The way this came across to me is that this particular particle here, up until he ate the slow fruit or whatever gave him his abilities, that they hadn't yet discovered it, but then he discovered it when he ate it, right? So whatever was in the fruit that gave him this ability hadn't been discovered, and then he came along and discovered it. Thinking about it now, that's kind of like how I interpret it. He says, whatever this light strikes, whether it's a living creature, liquid, or gas, will maintain all its other properties but lose velocity. But that's absurd. Okay, slow poke photons slow down anything they touch. So the way that I read this, again, as somebody who's admittedly not as well versed in the series, is that this dude ate a fruit, and the fruit gave him this ability. He decided to call this ability, or the thing that powers this ability, slowpoke photons. He used that particular term. Now, it would be tempting, and he also refers to the gleam that comes off of it as light, right? And it does appear visually similar to light, and maybe it is made up of individual parts that are analogous to photons. But he is specifically calling this thing not just light that then has this additional property to it. From my interpretation, he's calling it a slow beam, and he's calling it slowpoke photons. He's referring to it with its own new term. Like, he had to call this shit something, and this is the term that he used, which means that there's probably some similarity between what he's using and light and real photons, but it doesn't mean necessarily that these photons correspond one-to-one with real-world photons. I mean, I know this, I've said this before, and some people find this ridiculous, so I apologize. I'm not trying to be an asshole, but realistically speaking, photons in our world don't form together in these little bubble sphere thing or disk things. They don't make this sound effect when they are produced. They don't make any sounds when they're produced, right? They don't like slowly expand. Well, I shouldn't say slowly. They don't expand in like these ripple formations like this, and they don't slow things down when they touch things. So these photons, one way or another, even if they are technically photons, they're a different class of photon than the photon that we have in the real world. They have different properties and different effects. They have a different pattern through which they're distributed. They have different interactions with things in their environment. And because of all that, I think it's fair to say that it would be an assumption to just say that these photons are necessarily moving at the speed of light and that they have otherwise light-like properties just because they're called photons, right? Yes, Luffy, or Foxy, sorry, decided to use this term. He chose this term. But that doesn't mean that the term, what's the term for it? That it prescribes attributes to the thing itself. Just because he calls it a photon doesn't mean that the thing automatically gets all the attributes of a photon in our real world. And so then I brought up stuff like, and it's a bit of a tangent, but like, Laser Circus, Darui's attack from Naruto, and Rikume's miracle, whatever the fuck it's called, Ultra Mega Fighting Miracle Kick Elbow, whatever, from Dragon Ball. And I pointed out that, like, just because Darui calls his shit Laser Circus doesn't mean it's, like, analogous to a real-world laser, and doesn't mean it's a fucking circus, right? Just because Rikume calls it Miracle Kick doesn't mean that it's literally invoking the power of God. To try to establish, once again, not specifically that these particles are definitely not the speed of light, but that saying just because they're called light, or just because they're called photons, to look at that and just say, okay, then we can apply these real world attributes to them is, I think, risky to do because they have all of these other things that are different about them, which means that they're a different thing, right? They're not the same. If we see a slimy creature in the forest with 4 legs that's hopping around, we might, or like that's sort of like slithering around in the water or whatever, in the mud, And we might be like, oh, that looks like a frog, so I'm going to call this the slither frog. And it turns out later though that that's a salamander. You know, salamanders are very similar to frogs in a lot of ways, but they're still a different thing, right? So I think the initial naming of a thing doesn't necessarily mean that it's carried forward all the attributes that it has. So I think for some reason that was a huge point of contention in that conversation that I had with Eon. And I felt like, not necessarily that it was his fault or anything, but I felt like the conversation kind of looped around. And what happened, and you can review the conversation and see if you agree if you're interested, what happened was I kept trying to be like, let me just try to be very clear about this, that naming something doesn't necessarily mean that it has all the attributes of the name that you've given it. Something sharing a name in the real world and a fictional universe doesn't mean that they have the same attributes. And because this thing works differently and has other attributes, maybe we should go in from a neutral position and then see where it goes, instead of saying, okay, let's just assume that it has the speed because it would in the real world, and then going from there, right? Well, I feel like, could be wrong, but I feel like my overall perspective was pretty fair, and that what I was advocating for was neutral ground, see where the evidence leads, and then go from there. And for whatever reason, my reasoning was not persuasive. And I think that the way that I came across was as the fun police, right? People seem to already agree that that this feat is a light speed feat. I come in and say, no, 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 you're wrong. You haven't done your homework. You get 10 points off for this. You get an F on that. You get an A for effort, but this is wrong, right? Like, I come in and I'm the grumpy old fucking grouch. I'm the Grinch who stole Lightspeed from Foxy. And then, like, people ask me, okay, so where's your evidence? Where's your scaling? Like, what speed would you give it? Like, what's your standard of evidence? Like, what are your lofty standards, essentially? And this is where I think, to be fair, and to try to, like, accept the feedback as best I can, there is something kind of fucking infuriating about being on the receiving end of the skeptical approach, because regardless of whether or not your argument is right or wrong, if you put in a ton of effort to research and understand something and you put forward an argument and somebody else shows up and it comes across as they're being like, nuh-uh, 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 it kind of sucks and it's kind of frustrating. And it feels like, well, you've done all the work and they haven't done anything. They're to naysay what you're saying. And so what the fuck? Like, what right do they have to come in here and just say no, no, no and be a stick in the mud? And I get that. And so I'm going to try to internalize that feedback, and I'm going to try to figure out how I can communicate that stuff better. At the same time, I still think I'm right. It's the thing. I'm sorry, but I still think that, like, at the end of the day, while I can work on my communication skills for sure, and I'm going to try to sincerely, I do think that, like, there just isn't a preponderance of evidence here to me that's solid enough to say that just because these things are called beams and they move at the speed of light, or I just jousted myself there. Or hoisted myself on my own petard, I think is the expression. But then my friends started saying, jousted myself with my own pickard, and then that stuck in my brain. So thanks, friends. But anyway, I Freudian slipped there. But yeah, like, I basically, like, my approach to this is I would like for us to make fewer assumptions and ask more questions. And I know that can be annoying, and I know sometimes that can lead to things getting more and more complicated and messy, but sometimes I think that's necessary to get to the quality of understanding that we all deserve, which is all I'm advocating for at the end of the day. So, not to belabor this point too much, I just want to make sure that I acknowledged both, like, the perspective that I still hold, but also things that I could have potentially done differently, and areas that there are for me to learn. I'll catch up on chat real quick in a second, but I did want to mention, as I'm going through this, right, like, I'm trying to look for other pieces of evidence, and I'm going to pick on Eon a little here, but I promise it's not a personal thing. It's just, I'm going to use something from our conversation as an example. One example that doesn't matter and is totally fine, but, like, it reminds me of stuff that I've run into a bunch in the Naruto community. So sorry, Eon, like I'm using you as an example, but don't take it personally. It's just like it's just like a useful way of kind of summarizing other shit that I've dealt with that isn't your fault, if that makes sense, right? So a couple of things. As the fight starts to go on, it's a little bit difficult to get a sense of exactly how fast the beam is with respect to Luffy, because like he's in midair already and he's falling, but then we just see the beam activated, right? It's like we don't really get to see a progression of the beam. It's just kind of on. It's off here and it's on there and it's all the way through. So at the very least, we can say that Foxy's able to cast and propagate the beam faster than Luffy falls from this height to this height, which seems like a split second, right? So it's pretty fucking fast. Um, but I mean, you could get a precise calc by like factoring in acceleration due to gravity and stuff like that, right? But it's hard to get anything precise, and so you go through here and you try to look for things, and it's kind of hard to do so to find anything definitive. But here's a couple of things I noticed, and you can tell me whether or not you think these are relevant. But this thing over here, I noticed that when Luffy sees these arrows, the arrows are presumably not light speed, right? These are arrows that just get shot out of a, I'm not even sure what, they get shot out of a crossbow or something like that. They seem to be just regular arrows, unless I'm deeply mistaken. Seems like they're made of wood with feather fletchings and iron tips or something like that, right? Shot out of a ballista or a crossbow or something. Which would mean that once the slow effect wears off, they'd just be moving at like, I don't know, how fast do we think these are, right? I'm curious. I don't know. Do we think these are as fast as the speed of sound? Are they hypersonic? Are they Mach 100? Are they the speed of light? Because Luffy sees them coming. He sees them when they're slow, and he has time to process and react to them. He knows what the mechanics are. But then as they're approaching him, he seems like kind of pressed, right? He seems to be dodging. Again, it's impossible to tell for sure, but he seems to be almost taken aback by how fast they are. So as a casual reader, it seems to me like Luffy dodging an arrow that he already sees coming and already has a chance to react to is a close call, right? Like he could have gotten hit by this, which means that if he's the speed of light, then these arrows have to be really fucking fast. And I don't know if that makes sense. It's an open question. I don't know if that makes sense given the context of what else we know about the weaponry. So I feel like in a conversation with Eon, I might ask a question like, how fast are these arrows? And a response that I might get from, not just from him specifically, but the kind of response that I tend to get is, it doesn't matter, because we've already established that the photons are photons and the light is light. And that's where I start to get frustrated, because I'm like, okay, I understand that, but maybe if these arrows are actually like normal speed, that would actually, or like even if they're like, you know, Mach 100, right? Maybe we can use this as evidence to go back and question or qualify or add like healthy skepticism to the light speed claim, instead of saying that because the light speed thing is true, then these must be like super ultra mega fast arrows. In other words, when you're testing the validity of an equation, sometimes I think it's useful to try the equation in reverse and see if it works both ways. And if it doesn't, there might be something wrong with your math. As an analogy, it's not, I have to do literal math, right? So, again, I'm not exactly sure how to interpret this, because they're like these weird faces, so maybe they don't move the same as the regular beams or particles, so I didn't really spend too much time worrying about that. That's fine. Need that ad blocker. I'm sorry. But then this happens, right? When Luffy shows up again, we have this reaction from the MC, and he says, Straw Hat Luffy has miraculously survived. This is actually the first panel of this this arc that I ever read. He evaded the cannon attack at short range. What speed? Are you serious? Incredible. So we have a statement from the MC, which granted, he's like super hyped up. He's riling up the crowd. But he's also a member, which I didn't realize at first, he's a member of Foxy's crew. So he knows him and he's seen, how many battles has Foxy done like this before, of these like Davy Jones back battles? That's like 960, I think. He's done hundreds of them, right? So this MC has seen a lot of stuff, and he's not just like drumming it up for the crowd. He seems personally genuinely shocked, and other people in the crowd like also can't believe it. They're stunned that he dodged a cannonball at close range. So my follow-up question is, how fast is the cannonball? Well, first of all, let me say, do we think it's reasonable to say that if multiple people who have witnessed multiple battles before are so surprised and shocked by this character's ability to dodge a cannonball at close range, wouldn't it be reasonable to say then that this is an impressive thing based on the multiple data points that we have? If that is indeed the case, then how come they're reacting to him dodging the cannonball like that at close range, but they didn't react to him dodging the arrow with that same degree of surprise, and they didn't react to him dodging the slow beam with that degree of surprise? Now, that none of what I said means that the slow beam is not light speed, right? It just means that if the slow beam is light speed, well, nobody seems to really give a shit that Luffy dodged it. They're not very impressed. But Luffy, like, barely dodged those arrows, and then everybody was shocked when he dodged a cannonball, so it would then seem to follow that the cannonball is faster than the speed of light beams. Now, the follow-up question for that, the contingent question is, does that make sense with how cannonballs work in this verse? And as far as I know, it could be. This is a fictional universe, and this fictional universe could indeed contain light-speed cannonballs, for all the fuck I know. But that's a question that I think would need to be addressed and reconciled in order to make this all make sense. And frankly, to skip through the debate, hemming and hawing and the walking on eggshells, I don't see why we would ever think that this fucking cannonball is the speed of light or anywhere near it. So to me personally, stepping outside the debate sphere or whatever, me personally, I think that if you're at chapter 300 of a 1,000 chapter series, and you already have cannonballs that can fire at the speed of light, you've already massively power cliffed the fuck out of your series, haven't you? Like, how crazy does the series get if only after a few years of publication, chapter 300, they're already firing lightspeed cannonballs? Like, they haven't given them much. Well, I mean, you can go as high as you want, right? But does that actually make sense? And when you think about the physics of the world too, like, obviously fictional physics is not the same as real world physics necessarily, but how fucking strong, if the mass of these cannonballs, which I think is, we're actually given a mass of like 12 pounds to 24, somewhere in the there's a character called Buggy who shows up earlier, and if I remember correctly, Buggy's like cannonballs are described as being either 12 pounders or 24 pounders. Am I remembering that correctly? It's either that or there's like an SBS note where Oda is talking about like the sizes and dimensions of cannonballs, and he says like there's a 12 pounder and a 24 pounder, something like that. So even if we assume that one of these cannonballs is like only 10 pounds, right? Does it make sense within this verse, genuine question, for a 10-pound ball to be moving at the speed of light? Like, does that fit in with the concepts of friction and environmental damage and whatever else we see happening in the verse? There's one last thing that I'll mention, and then I'll move on to other stuff. I'll catch up on chat. I see one smart, I see Dr. Strangle. I do see one smart, but I also see Dr. Strangle. It's good to see you, man. We were talking about the Toneri Moon stuff earlier. I'll get back to that in a second. But yeah, just before I move on to Sage's video and all that, I just want to point out one more thing, which again, this is a question, and I know it sounds like a leading question. I guess it sort of is, to be totally honest, but it's not a question that I'm saying already necessarily has an answer. In this scene, which is in chapter 316, Foxy is in his gorilla punching machine. He's moving slowly is subjective, but he's gradually moving towards Luffy while they're having this conversation. He says the word slow beam and fires the beam out. Luffy reacts to it. He then turns around and says out loud where's he aiming, which is not an internal monologue thing, right? Then Foxy says, "Look behind you," and Luffy responds to this by doing so, by looking behind him, saying who's that, saying it's a mirror. Then Foxy says, "That's right," and then Luffy says, "Whoa," and dodges. So, again, this is an open question, but does it make sense for this to be the speed of light if these characters have the opportunity to have this extended, to have this little back and forth verbally while this is happening? Because if this is moving at the speed of light, then the contingent what would follow from this would mean that these guys are talking faster than the speed of light, which is possible because it's a fictional universe. But my question is, does that make sense? Or is it a better explanation? Some might say a more parsimonious explanation. I don't want that to come back and bite me, but parsimonious explanation that Luffy sees this beam moving. It's slower than light. He can react to it. He can see it. They can have a brief exchange, and then it comes towards him, and then he can dodge out of the way. Personally, I'll just be honest, not beat around the bush, I don't think that this is the speed of light, because if you look at all those other bits of context, I think once you start to put together the tapestry of all these things, it doesn't really add up, and I'm going to put a pin in this, right? Because this might contradict something that I'm going to say later. So just to be fair, right? I want to acknowledge that this is a possible contradiction to something that's coming up later. So pin in this, come back to it. I'm going to be honest about this. But in the meantime, it seems like in order to put forward this explanation of Luffy being the speed of light, because these beams are the speed of light, all of these other things then would have to be true as well. And I don't see how to reconcile all that information, so it doesn't seem like a good thesis that combines all the data. You know what I mean? And because of that, I think it's worth being skeptical about the claim itself. Now, all of this, we're basically done talking about this, or I'm done talking about these feats. But moving on from there, the reason that I'm bringing this up in a Naruto stream, ostensibly a Naruto stream, is that all of this is more frustrating to me, not because of my conversation with Eon specifically. He didn't really do anything wrong. He has his opinions or whatever, but because this represents sort of a culmination of the argumentation that we, I'm sure, have bumped into in the Naruto scaling realm as well. It's something that I don't quite know how to describe, but I feel like I keep bumping up against it again and again and again and again. So this will then transition into our Toneri discussion in a second. But let me catch up on chat. I have a lot to catch up on. Thank you for your patience as I meander my way through this fucking topic. So, Very Nice says Kizaru is either light speed or exponentially faster than that, depending on how you look at the verse. Personally, I think Kizaru is light speed and that the verse slowly creeps up to FTL. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, like, again, I don't know for sure. One second. Like, Kizaru could actually be, in the same way that the photons that we talked about don't necessarily have the same properties as real-world photons, that argument would apply to Kizaru as well. So if I were to say that Kizaru has to be the speed of light because he is made of light, I'd be making the same mistake that I just, quote-unquote, called out Eon for making here, right? Not to use, like, it would need to be that harsh about it or whatever, but, like, it's the same kind of idea. Because you could just say, okay, well, Kizaru's photons that he's made of, we can't assume that those are real-life photons as well. They could actually be way, way slower or way, 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 way faster. So, yeah, that's absolutely a possibility. Ursa says, you're not the Grinch. Their feedback isn't worth taking into account because their position is rooted in an agenda that appeals to their desires. I mean, I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate you being encouraging of me not feeling like a Grinch. And you might be right in that I think that they have a more of an emotional response. This is going to sound douchey of me, so I acknowledge that. But, like, it may be the case that for this particular argument, they're going more off of vibes and I'm going more off of, like, logical argumentation and intellectual rigor. I tried to make myself sound douchey on purpose there, right? Which is, like, the fact that I happen to be applying more of a pseudo, like, approximate scientific perspective to it or whatever, like trying to go through the argumentation and blah, blah, blah. It's not like I can gatekeep the verse from other people. You know what I mean? It's like, if two people read a comic for teenagers about silly, goofy pirates, one of which is called Monkey Luffy, you know, and one of them comes to the, sorry, I gotta stop messing with this fucking thing in the background. One of them comes to the conclusion that he's light speed and the other one doesn't. It's like, whatever. whatever, right? It's a fun comic for kids. Who cares? But if we're gonna do the power scaling thing, we're gonna like get deeper into it, and we're gonna try, for whatever reason we decide to, we're gonna try to be more precise about it. Well, then I think we're inviting a more precise look, and when I apply that, I do think that like basically like you're kind of signing up for house rules, right? Nobody has to apply this skeptical lens to the series, but if you're going to do power scaling on a series, I think that power scaling should come with a bit of higher entry requirement, so to speak, just because that's kind of the point. The point is to try to apply a skeptical analysis to it, right? So at a certain point, I think we just have to kind of agree as a community, like, okay, which approach are we going to take here? And I don't, there's not an objectively correct answer, right? It's kind of like how we decide as a community we want to handle it. But personally, I do think what I've seen and what I'm most conscious of, the reason why I started making videos about Naruto on this channel in general is that what I saw was power scalers doing their power scaling thing, but then trying to appeal to a wider audience of general readership, of general fans, and then fans getting the wrong idea about the series from a casual perspective because the the power scaling folks were, in my opinion, giving them incorrect information, and then that leading to like all of this unnecessary conflict. And again, this is not Eon's fault. He's just like, yeah, just kind of caught me at the tail end of a year of me running into this with other content creators. But you know, on the other hand, not to back off too much, not to totally relinquish the point. I do think he happens to be making, respectfully, I'm going to give the feedback that I think he's making the same kind of mistakes that some of the Naruto scalers are, and I think that this is an incorrect perspective and that I still disagree with. Whatever, Cinefrega, right? It's like whatever. But I'm, yeah. Anyway, Very Nice says they don't want to entertain skepticism at all. Same with Naruto versus Dragon Ball. I do think skepticism gets a bad rap because I think it's really fucking frustrating to be on the receiving end of weaponized skepticism. I get it. It sucks. But sometimes it's like kind of necessary. Like sometimes I think there's no way around it. But anyway. Yeah, hi again. One Smart said, I'd be curious if you had thoughts you were working on there. Are you talking about the Luffy dodging the face bomb? Specifically, I was talking about Luffy dodging the beam itself. The face bomb is weird enough that I don't think it necessarily follows the same rules as the other beams. In the anime, it definitely seems to move a whole lot slower. And, Foxy is able to insert his real head in the procession, so to speak. So I think I would regard that as a separate feat. But yeah. Ursa says, I think a lot of this boils down to how pragmatic you want to view the fantasy world you're reading. That's a good way to phrase it. Remember that an author made this, so we have to figure out what is likely being conveyed to a level. To me, it's more likely that the slow beams are slow, then all the other stuff is true. Yeah, right. It's like, and to be fair, this is something that'll come up in a exchange Sage and I had recently, which is that like, so just to be clear, argument A being more parsimonious than argument B doesn't necessarily mean that argument A is right and B is wrong, and it doesn't mean the opposite. Parsimony is a principle that is worth aspiring towards, but it's not evidence in and of itself. But if you put forward a hypothesis, to be fair, and that hypothesis offers little explanatory power and winds up just generating a whole bunch of other questions that don't have like compelling answers and just leads to a whole big fucking mess, and then somebody else comes along and it says, oh, I have a much simpler explanation that does answer these questions, then obviously that second one seems to have more explanatory power. So we're going to talk about this in the roles are kind of flipped, where Sage is Sage had the perspective that I was making this mistake and I disagreed there. At the end of the day, he and I agree that the pursuit of parsimony and that the adherence to like trying to avoid overcomplicating things is a good thing, and that once you put forward a claim about something, you should be aware of what the contingencies of that claim are. In other words, like if X is true, then Y, Z, A, B, Q must also be true. And so if those things are also true, does that make sense, or does that create more problems? And you know, it's definitely worth considering. Definitely something to be aware of. Hopefully that made sense. Um, it's more likely it's also me. Yeah, I do agree with that. Hey there, slimy orb. Some beautiful phrases just like emerge naturally from these streams, and I love it. I hope you are doing well, slimy orb. Thank you for joining us this evening. I think it's more Kizo to his light speed when he converts himself into light, but when he's moving normally, he isn't moving at light speed. That seems fair. That seems reasonable. I, yeah. I mean, like, I wonder if it's sort of analogous to like I can't even think. In my head, I'm imagining like a lightsaber, where the lightsaber might be quote unquote made of light, but that doesn't mean it gets swung around or even extends at the speed of light. But then if you were to be able to somehow like fire off the beam from the lightsaber, like detach it and shoot it, and it moved at the speed of light, then you could say, well, like, Foxy kind of does something like that with his sword, right? Like, he turns the slow beam into a sword. I wouldn't necessarily assume that the slow beam sword, like, the movement of his arm when he's swinging that shit around is necessarily as fast as the projectile, or vice versa. Like this thing over here, which looks pretty sussy, but let's not think too hard about that. Yeah, I don't know that this is the same speed, right? Just because he made it into a whip type thing. In fact, it might be faster. Like the tip of the whip might be fast. Like I can swing my arm as fast as I can, and I don't know, maybe get it up to 30, 40 miles an hour. I don't know. Maybe that's a huge high ball. I don't fucking know. But like, if I have a whip, I can crack it such that the tip of the whip basically creates a little sonic boom, a little crack, right? Doesn't mean that my arm is moving at the speed of sound. So I don't know. Some ambiguity there. 1 second. I'll get some more water. Okay. Sorry says, also random, but oh my god, I fucking love Atlas. I wish Garen was in the show, though. It sucks that he didn't get into the 2003 series because I bet they would have made him so cool. I'm so sorry, I don't know who you're talking about. I think you mentioned... Oh, Astro Boy. Yes, I missed that comment. Sorry, I was watching Astro Boy with your girlfriend. Just a couple lesbians watching the Mighty One is sick. That's fucking awesome. I'm really glad you're enjoying that. And Astro Boy is Tezuka, right? Tezuka's like the grandfather of modern anime design and everything. So like that's a bit of history there. I mean, like you are experiencing a classic is how I should phrase that. Hey Luan, it's good to see you. Hope you are doing well. Thanks for joining us this evening. Luan says, "What do you mean by fixing?" Okay, so it's a bit cheeky, right? So first of all, I think Toneri is really cute. I think like he is the kind of aesthetic that I like in dudes. I tend to prefer. I traditionally I have mostly dated women, but when I have dated dudes, they tend to be more quote unquote feminine. Obviously, that term is kind of imprecise, right? But like traditionally feminine, as opposed to like I don't really go for lumberjack types usually. This is one way to put it, right? So Toneri is kind of my type, but also like he has some serious problems in the last. So the meme is like, I can fix him, I can fix her. Like when you get involved with somebody who you know is a fucking problem, who you know is bad news and is going to ruin your life, but you keep telling yourself like kind of semi delusionally like, no wait, no, all he needs is like just the right kind of, if he's just like with the right person, I could be the right person, I could show him the way, right? So that's the main point. But then I guess you could also say that like that there was a triple entendre with the second definition being that I can fix the bad scaling around him that I think Sage like fell into, and also that hopefully I could fix Sage's arguments, aka fix him. Now that's pretty bold of me to say, I realize that, right? But it's intended more as a joke than anything else. Hopefully it will be received in the playful spirit of which is put forward. Yeah. Hopefully that made some sense. Luan says that brother Toneri is a lost cause. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. In the last, he definitely is. But then in Boruto X Naruto, whatever connections, he's actually a pretty decent dude. And then he tries to redeem himself later on. So It depends on what version of him you're talking about. Like in the Boruto anime, he's pretty decent. He also doesn't have eyes though, which is part of his allure is those piercing eyes. Which, come to think of it, he did steal from a little kid though. So eh. When he's a 10, but he steals eyes from children. He's an 11. No, 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 no. Okay, okay, okay. Um, Chapter 5 Tenkizaru uses sacred Yaramir. Oh yeah, that was kind of cool to hear that the Yaramir was mentioned as well. Obviously, it's like a different thing in the One Piece verse, but they're both inspired by the that part of the Imperial Regalia, right? Let me see. Oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought. He can travel at light speed, but he doesn't normally, since he has to, for lack of a better word, turn to light. Gotcha. Okay. And see, that's the other thing too. This is why I kind of like. I understand that it's compelling or fun for crossverse debates, especially to be like, my character one shots and blitzes your character, ha ha ha. And honestly, I think that if Genjutsu works crossverse, there's a lot of instances where like, yeah, Itachi just does kind of slam. It's kind of unfair. But at the same time, like even going into verses like JJK, Chainsaw Man, One Piece, Dragon Ball to an extent. Now, I'm assuming that Genjutsu works when I say this, and I'm assuming that they don't have like mind hack resistance or whatever. So a lot of assumptions there, obviously. But I do think that there are some characters in certain verses that are just fucking broken, and Itachi's like ocular jutsu kind of like Tsukuyomi falls into that category. However, within the Naruto verse itself, it comes with serious caveats, right? Like him going blind over time, and also like him getting really exhausted, etc., etc. And I know for a power scaling debate, you'd be like, but he's holding back, right? So he could have been faking his exhaustion. He could have just been like putting on a show for Kakashi or whatever, and for Kisame, whatever. Like there are ways to counteract that argument. But like if we put away the power scaling argumentation for a second, if we just like read the series, like I think Kishimoto is just trying to balance the ability so it's not totally fucking broken in general, and like pretty much every ability in the Naruto verse has some kind of weakness or counter. It's not like, you know, I don't feel like the Gary Stews that Kishimoto writes are like total Gary Stews. Like they always have some kind of flaw or way to beat them or something like that, right? So I don't know. It just, if you just write a character who just fucking wins all the time, even Superman has kryptonite, right? Like it's just not compelling if there's no caveats to the abilities. So um that makes more sense to me. Hey there, Sora Cloud. I hope you are doing well. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Virgil versus the Otsutsuki. Are you referring to Virgil from DMC, from the Devil May Cry series? Unfortunately, I don't really know how high he scales, but he definitely seems so like Dante goes up against some pretty high level demons and stuff like that, which I would assume, again, like I don't know the verse, but I would assume that they don't just have like regular flesh durability, right? Like he fucking riddles them full of bullets. Nero has like the fucking giant sword that has like a motorcycle engine built into it, like they're using magical attacks and stuff like that. And they just take so much punishment from him over and over again. So they obviously like have much higher than like baseline organic flesh durability or whatever. Um, and I do think that the Otsutsuki themselves don't necessarily have super high durability unless they're molding chakra. But I mean, that's like saying, well, I mean, that's a silly statement because in all the fights that we see, the Otsutsuki are like actively using chakra. The Otsutsuki don't really have yeah, well, this is hard to answer because like on the one hand, Momoshiki and Kinshiki fall pretty easily to characters who aren't even like demonstrating particularly insane feats in their fight. The fused version or the ascended version of Momoshiki is definitely like has much higher durability, but how high does that go really? If you had said like another random shinobi, then I might have been like, well, I think basic shinobi are like have baseline human durability that then gets supplemented with chakra, but the Otsutsuki are weird. And they also have like jutsu negating things, and then like fucking Kaguya can, I don't know, like regenerate after getting her fucking arm chopped off and split in half and whatever else, and maybe just keep regenerating indefinitely. So I would say that there are definitely win conditions for Dante or for Virgil, excuse me. I'm going from like I'm scaling from the things that Dante is able to harm, scaling Dante to Virgil, and then scaling Virgil to the Otsutsuki. I think that Virgil would probably have win conditions against some of them. I don't know what he's doing against TSOs and against like battlefield removal with fucking um uh what is Amino Minaka, right? Like stuff like that. I don't know what he's doing against Sukuna Hikuna or a Daikokuten, like. But if you put him in a one-on-one against Urashiki, like I don't think you'd have too many problems dealing with him. Um, yeah, it's hard to say for sure, but I like the idea of a fight between Virgil and like Urashiki being, or even like base Momoshiki, base Kinshiki being a decently even matchup. I have no idea though. Like I really don't really know the DMC verse super well, so everything I said could just be wrong. Um, Orb says chapter 508, pages 7 and 8 show him moving at light speed, or as according to him, kicking at light speed, and is partially using desolidifying to do so. Okay, that seems to add more context to that. Yeah. Um, Sorry, so I appreciate that. Sorry says in before it's revealed that Toneri is the DNA used to make Mitsuki and is Mitsuki's co-parent next to Orochimaru, but without consent because clone. I mean, like their design is very, very close. I wonder if that'll end up being the case, or I wonder if like Ikemoto just really liked the design of that character and decided to make a character based on that design as like a tribute. Um, I'd be curious if anybody knows if that's ever come up in like an interview or whatever. One second. um, Thank you, Ursai. I appreciate the offer for defense there, and it is mutual. If anybody like gives you shit, like I'm more than happy to step in. I really love this community. I really think we do a good job of looking out for each other and supporting each other. So yeah, it's 100% mutual, and I really appreciate it. It's very sweet of you. Dr. Strangle says if you were shown that within a verse, the people talk to each other while having to be moving it beyond sonic speed, would that move you narrative dissonance? Oh yeah, move your narrative dissonance. Yeah, so like we've been over this before, right? That scene in early Naruto where fucking Sasuke and Lee are in midair and they just seem to be suspended in midair and just talking like forever for like over a minute probably if you sound out the words and they just don't fall. So there are definitely instances where characters don't, they just like turn the physics off, right? Like the author wants to convey something and decides to focus on just getting that information across and doesn't seem to really give a shit if power scalers are going to be triggered by that later. But it's like, putting the storytelling and putting the info dumper exposition over the implications of the physics, right? Because like he owns the universe, he can do whatever he wants with it, he can play with it, doesn't have to be like super consistent. If you try to force a power scaling perspective onto that, what I could say is that there is a precedent in Naruto for characters being able to exchange complex thoughts in a moment in an exchange of blows. I don't think that that is explained at that point yet, and I don't think it's real. Like it's certainly way. This is like chapter 20 or 30 or something, right? So or actually more like 40, I think. But it's way before the whole exchange that Naruto and Sasuke have in Shippuden, or even at the end, the Valley of the End, where they exchange all those thoughts, right? So it's like, I think we're doing a bit of retrofitting, if I'm honest with that. But you could say that the Naruto verse has this precedent for people being able to have physics-defying conversations without actually defying physics. There's also a bunch of other shit, like, okay, I don't really have a problem with the idea that Shippuden characters can move at the speed of sound, like running at the speed of sound. If they're doing so, the wind has got to be really fucking loud in their ears. Like, just don't actually do this, but like as an example, get in a car, go 90 miles an hour, and stick your head out the window, right? Like, have somebody else drive and do that in the back seat or something. Buckle up first. Like, it's really, really fucking loud, really, really loud. So imagine going at the speed of sound. Like that shit, you would not be able to talk or hear anything. But despite their super fast speeds, the shinobi in Naruto are also depicted as moving really quietly as well. Like even though they're moving really fast, they don't generate sonic booms every time they go at super speeds or whatever. So I think that it's that you can extend your suspension of disbelief and just be like, somehow when shinobi and Naruto move really fast, they have a shinobi technique that we just never hear the name of that lets them do so quietly. They use their chakra to go quiet or something, right? Like, I don't think it's ever spelled out for us. So, this is one of those things where I think personally, like, there's times where we need to hit the pause button on the power scaling. It's just like it won't really get us a fucking good explanation of what's happening here. To me anyway, it makes more sense to just be like the author decided to not give a shit and just like not in a condescending way. He's just like, I want these characters to say this stuff right now, and it's cool, so I'm gonna do it. Right? Like, I think we should just let that one go. But so you could apply that to everything I said about Foxy, right? And that's why I don't want to like die on that hill. It's just one thing to consider. And so when I'm trying to look at it, it's like the full thing in context with all little bits and pieces adding up, because uh, we might be able to identify that conversation with Naruto and sorry, with Lee and Sasuke as like an outlier, as like one random thing that kind of just like shows up out of nowhere and doesn't make any sense. But then look at the rest of the series and be like, okay, well the series is consistent about this everywhere else. So then the question here for Luffy, for like the Foxy Beam, becomes, okay, what is actually happening here? Is this an instance where like the physics get suspended so they can talk, or is the shit working normally here? And how do we tell the difference between that? Can we tell the difference? I think the only way to do that is to really look at the series very thoroughly and exhaustively and figure out if there's some kind of a way for us to differentiate those two things. I think there probably is, but it's it's one of those things where I think the power scaling tool set doesn't necessarily work very well to answer that sort of question. But I could be missing something. It's a very good question, like genuinely. Ursa says Dragon Ball characters do have mind hacks resistance, but they have to manually overpower the control. It's not intrinsic resistance. Oh, okay. Yeah, I keep hearing that like Goku can resist mind infiltration or something, but I haven't seen it. But I believe it. Sure. One smart Itachi. Let me try that again. One smart says Itachi's display against Sasuke kind of reveals he was playing up the stamina issue with the amount of jutsu he used in that fight compared to his earlier ones. See, that I think is a good argument, right? You're looking at a different fight. You're evaluating the amount of fucking stamina that he displays in that context, and then comparing it retroactively. I think that makes sense. I think it's also possible that he gained more stamina over the time skip. So there are other variables to consider, but I like the way that you're approaching that, like building that tapestry, so to speak. Dr. Strangle says Kizaru has direct statements of light speed and not just implication from being light, and we see people intercept Kizaru's light travel, meaning they were moving relative to the speed that the light travels, and Kizaru moves physically at speed relative to the speed of the person who intercepted his light travel. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. Have we talked about the pacifista lasers? Because I feel like I've seen a scene where Luffy's getting shot out by the mouth lasers of this big robot thing, and he just like casually dodges left, right, left, right. And as far as I know, like he just like dodges his head out of the way, like Frieza, right? I like dodging a beam. And as far as I can tell, it's just that's just a beam of light, right? So Luffy would be light there. Like I don't have a problem with that based on what I've seen. One Smart says the Otsutsuki don't have many off guard moments, but it's clear when it happens. Yeah, I mean like I feel like, well, I mean, Kaguya getting off guarded, which I think it does kind of count as a sucker punch. Well, okay, all right. I don't want to Kaguya slander. I don't want to necessarily like bring all this up again, but like when Kaguya gets hit from behind by Sakura, she does react to it a bit, but she's not just like Kakuzu reacting to Naruto coming up from behind him, right? Like she's aware of it. She's aware that something's coming from behind her, but she was still sort of taken off guard and then like has to quickly react to that. She wasn't totally blindsided or sucker punched. She does kind of react to it, but it takes a second for her to do so. Hopefully that made sense. I just thought of something on Otsutsuki who learned enough of Yin Yang release would do the Jutsu Nullification stuff. Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's hard for people from pretty much any verse to deal with, unless they have an equivalent of Sage Mode. So maybe I've heard that the Logias in One Piece are like natural elements, and that people say that they could counter the TSOs. I really like that idea. I don't know if it holds up to scrutiny though. Ursa says, I think it's good to suggest that Kizaru is only light speed when he's phasing, but the reality is that he's completely made of light at all times anyway, so impartially phasing doesn't matter. Okay, yeah, I'm really interested to learn more about him. I think I'm going to, as tempted as I am to skip ahead, I think I'm going to just kind of slowly make my way through Water 7 and then get to Kizaru as opposed to jumping ahead, although I really, really want to, but yeah. Um, Sorry, my lip smacks, 1 second. Orb says, also an in-character thing, despite being able to move at light speed, Kizaru is just a lazy guy and will not really care if you try to attack him, so he won't pay attention if he thinks you can't hit him. That honestly makes a lot of sense, and I think the like character motivation, personality stuff is a huge like plays a huge role in a lot of fights, so it's very important to include that for sure. Ursa says, I like to think the way the way a writer tells their story is what results in what we analyze for power scaling. It's more likely that we could agree to adhere to the aesthetic of the story with disbelief. Yeah, I think it's the application of suspension of disbelief is something that I think is going to fluctuate as you read a story depending on the context. But personally, like if I try to put forward like hypotheses to explain what happened, one between Lee and Sasuke. One hypothesis is that they literally slowed down time. Two is that they moved way faster than normal. Or three is that the author just did like a magic fucky wucky type thing. And to me, when I test those hypotheses, the third one seems to be the most compelling. Let's see. Sorry says, I fucking hate Screen Rant. Got my hopes up for Dark Souls 4, and it's just some dude yapping about, guys, can we play Dark Souls 3 until this happens? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, Screen Rant has a pretty bad reputation, right? Like, I remember some of the first videos that I watched of Swag Kage's were him just, like, dunking on Screen Rant. Those are still really good if you haven't seen them. They're super entertaining. And, like, his reactions of genuine pain are just, like, so fucking, like, the shot in Troy to there, if that's the right term for it. Like I empathize with his pain, and it was really funny, if that makes any sense. Do you mean Body Flicker says one smart? I think, sorry, I kind of lost the thread there, so I'm not sure, I apologize. Orb says, and also, despite being far faster and far stronger than Trinity Exam's fourth gate Lee, no one ever kicks the air to fly. Yeah, like, you mean like how Guy does when he's in his, like, higher gates mode, so power scaling doesn't always matter, makes sense. Yeah. It's a tool to understand a story, but, you know, it doesn't necessarily work perfectly in all circumstances. Dr. Strangle says, suspend power scaling or suspend that exposition needs in universe. Reason why is it possible that the information is being communicated? I think it depends. It depends on the context. But in this instance, I think I was saying, if you try to apply a power scaling perspective to that, if I tried to do that, I would be inclined to say, like, one of those three hypotheses, right? Like, they're moving so fucking fast that they can, like, their mouths are moving like really fast to have that conversation, or they're communicating telepathically or something, or it's just like a foible of how it was depicted. Like, another explanation is that the characters aren't literally actually saying this stuff out loud. They're just like, Lee is realizing this stuff while looking at Sasuke, and then Sasuke is realizing it while looking at Lee, and like the author is translating their internal monologue into an external dialogue so that we can see it. But I don't know if that makes sense, because like they could have just had internal thoughts. Like, that shit happens in fucking JJK all the time, where like the two characters are like, oh, he's gonna do this, but he's gonna do that, then I'm gonna do this, right? It's like, you know, there's nothing stopping him from doing that either. So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can offer. I guess one thing that I'm probably just not going to be able to comment on. So one of the things that I saw a while ago, see if I can find this video. I think it was a YouTube channel called Getting the Robot, and they were explaining like why anime characters shout their attacks out loud. Because when you think about it, like, every ninja in Naruto is a fucking moron, because like they're supposed to be stealthy ninja who are like infiltrating and doing surprise attacks and sneaking, and they're always shouting exactly what their ability is going to be, right? Incredible self-report. And as far as I know, we never really see anybody, like, maybe Naruto does this at one point, but we never see anybody like shout water style, water wall, and then like throw out a wind shuriken instead. Like, everybody is like so fucking honest about their attacks. Like, they're always just like, hey motherfucker, this is literally what I'm about to do. And the way that that video explained it is that this is a reference to kabuki theater, that in Japan there's a theatrical tradition of kabuki, which I would encourage you to check out. Kabuki performances are which I'm pronouncing wrong, sorry, are like really, really cool. Really bummed that I didn't get a chance to see one in person when I was in Japan, but sometimes they have like traveling shows that you can see if you're in the States or whatnot. But anyway, in that, when the characters introduce themselves, they come out in a very bombastic way. They're all exaggerated. They announce their names or their titles, and so the way that they do that involves like a very theatrical, like over exaggerated projection, exaggerated from our perspective maybe, to the audience that's necessary for that sort of thing. So like if you go and watch a musical, and all of the people in the musical are facing the stage the whole time, and their mouths are way the fuck open like nobody would ever do, it's because they have to project to reach you in the audience, right? So I think this also applies, and I think when you look at something like a character casting a jutsu in Naruto and saying the name out loud, you can either say, "Oh, these all these ninja are fucking stupid morons," or you can say, "Oh, I get it. This is a cultural literary tradition that is meant to represent something in universe." And it might actually be the case that literally in the Naruto universe, despite the fact that we see this happen every single time, that like they wouldn't actually do that. It's just the way that the story is being told to us in a storytelling tradition that extends from kabuki, if that makes sense. I know it sounds crazy to be like the thing that we see them do every single time they don't actually literally do, but keeping in mind that like we are being told a story that's being conveyed to us secondhand through this depiction, like through a filter, and that filter is the manga. And manga is a form of storytelling with its own tropes and its own history. And so like imagine you were to read a manga rendition of the Second World War or something. I guess it's kind of like fucking Attack on Titan when you think about it, or Hellsing Ultimate. But let's say you read a manga depiction of the Second World War, right? Like even if it were historically accurate, there's going to be certain things the way that things are represented is not ever going to be one to one because of the traditions of the medium. So that's did that answer your question at all? Orb says Luffy dodging the pacifistas post time skip and most likely using observation hockey. I don't know anything about hockey, so I'll have to take your word for that. Let's talk Dragon Ball versus Naruto. What were your issue with most of the video? Okay, I'm sorry, Ursa, I'm going to disappoint you slightly because I haven't made my way through the whole video. I've just really skimmed through the Naruto scaling part. I wasn't even really planning on listening to the Dragon Ball stuff, to be honest, because I don't know enough about Dragon Ball to dispute it. Um, but if you would like to talk about that, I will commit to watching the whole thing, and then we can discuss it more. I know Dragon Ball pretty well because I grew up reading it, but I don't know it from a power scaling perspective. Like when Mr. Narrative and those folks last year asked me to talk about Kid Buu versus Buhan, I had to do quite a bit of research to kind of familiarize myself with the nuances of that stuff. So I'm happy to talk about it, but especially once we get into Dragon Ball Super, like I'm not gonna. I haven't read any data books or interviews or anything like that. Like I just don't know it the way that I know Naruto. So I'll try, but my perspective comes is like I start off from somebody who just like knows. I would like to say I know a lot about Naruto. I think that's fair for me to say, although I'm always learning more. Um, and so my approach to his video was to like fact check him on Naruto stuff first and foremost. But if you're interested in talking more about Dragon Ball, totally. I'll. I mean, I have tomorrow off from work, although I'm still working for part of the day, so I should be able to get through it before Sunday, so we can talk about it more then. Um, yeah, sorry for keeping you waiting there. Orb says, even if you didn't learn about Future Sight yet, it might have been knowing where the beams are starting to... Oh, yeah, so you're talking about, like, aim dodging? That makes sense. I think that's a very important thing to consider as well. Dr. Strangle says, yeah, I think Zoro might have just speeded the Pacifista's targeting system. Yeah, for sure. So, again, like, I need to kind of bone up on the context here, but aim dodging or whatever, that's a very, very valid consideration. I've seen vids talking about that and pointing out the Logia being able to counter jutsu nullifications just like throwing a rock at them. I do want to learn more about that, honestly. It's a really interesting perspective. Sora says, funny enough, Marvel and DC's got some crazy mind hacks. For example, Charles Xavier and Phoenix were in a psychic battle on infinite planes of existence. Holy shit, that actually sounds really cool. Yeah, credit to Sage for, I this is gonna be a backhanded compliment, I guess. I kind of feel bad about it, but there's no real way around it. Um, but Sage making mistakes on things or like saying things that I disagree with anyway consistently results in me then going to research and learn more about stuff. So he had a debate or a tiff with somebody about cosmic armor Superman, and because I was curious, I learned a little bit about like like high level scaling and stuff. Oh, and then fucking the was it Goku versus Superman? Like there was some stuff in that video that I went over. It was just like I think that the probably the worst power scaling argument that I've ever heard was the idea that because Goku breaks the screen in that fucking Universal 4D ride that means he's boundless. But that could be a whole other fucking video. That was painful. I'm still reeling from that. But anyway, the fucking at the end of the day, right? Not to be too shitty or anything. I did wind up learning that the DC verse scales way higher than I thought. And it's really cool to see how crazy it gets, right? Urza says Dragon Ball characters have telepathy and can do mind battles with meditation via image training with each other. Can they? I didn't know that. I didn't know they could do mind training. Oh wait. No, maybe I did. Um, don't Krillin and Goku do that? Like way back in part one, where they're training with Master Roshi. Um, I think, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, but it's been forever, so I'll take your word for it. One Smart says there's usually a pause in the action when they talk. Yeah, that is often the case, especially in JJK, right? Like, I kind of love and kind of hate how JJK wrote just like over expositing your own attacks um, into the power system. It's is there a word for like peak genius and ultimate stupidity at the same time? Like idiot savant shit. Like I'm being mean. I'm being mean, right? But like the idea that like you have an ability that gets stronger the more you explain it is such a great way of like incorporating the trope of characters over explaining their shit in the genre, but also it's like you're giving yourself a free pass to just constantly do that shit, and it brings every fucking fight to a screeching fucking halt, and it's so annoying. So like I don't know whether to be proud or infuriated, maybe both. Anyway, where am I? Dr. Strangle says this might sound stupid, but I think the simplest explanation is the characters in fiction can communicate via sound faster than sound. That might be. That might be. It might be one of those things where like the author just will have them communicate as fast as they need to understand each other regardless of physics. And I think that is something that we could investigate by like doing a power scaling analysis on it. Like you can potentially get to that conclusion that way, right? Um Talking is a free action. Oh yeah, talking is a free action. That's like in Dungeons and Dragons, right? Dungeons. I'm realizing also, like listening to back to some of my streams, that I apparently can't say community. I keep saying community. Like everybody in our community is like fucking. I never noticed that about myself before, but I guess dungeon is hard for me to say. Dungeons and Dragons. Okay. Anyway, sorry about that. But yeah, talking is a free action. That makes sense. I like that. One Smart says Naruto characters usually only say the name when directly facing a straightforward fight. Kakashi has hit people with Chidori without saying the name. Yeah, that's right. That's right. When he assassinates Kakuzu's first heart or whatnot, he doesn't say Chidori or Raikiri, right? I don't think he says it either when he catches the incoming ones that Kakuzu uses with false darkness, right? I don't think he says it when he like turns it on to assassinate, like to finally kill Kakuzu. So there are probably plenty of instances that I'm just not thinking of. Minato doesn't literally shout Flying Raijin every single time he uses that. Neither does Tobirama. Naruto doesn't always say Rasengan or Rasen Shuriken out loud. He says it a lot, but not every time. So yeah, I'm exaggerating. Saria says, honestly, Marvel comics are just weird in general because thoughts are faster than light, and it makes me question how fast Quicksilver must think. That is an interesting implication, right? Like, not just for the brains of these people that move faster than light, but also like consciousness and stuff like that, right? Cognitive processing. I would be curious to see like a psychologist or a neuroscientist do like their own version of like neuro power scaling of those verses to be like, like sometimes Neil deGrasse Tyson will show up and be like, hey, I just watched Interstellar, let me talk about whether or not this stuff makes sense. Or Brian Cox will do the same thing, right? It would be cool to hear more like experts react to depictions of like extreme cognitive feats, which I think Shinigami you'd probably enjoy that too, right? Like I wonder if there's my partner and I were kind of addicted to watching these doctors like reacting to medical TV show scenes and stuff like that. We should probably get back on that, right? So, um, Saria says, honestly, Marvel comics are just weird in general because thoughts are fast. Oh yeah, you just said that. Orb says observation hockey is advanced sensory. Think of what Moo does as observation hockey. Okay, cool. Oh, is are you caboose? My brain is completely cooked with the sickness. Yeah, yeah. I didn't realize that either. But as Dr. Strangle will tell you, he literally had to walk me through his name like letter by letter over the course of what like 1 or 2 hours. I just don't make those connections. So I'm sorry. I feel like a doofus if I didn't make the connection there. But I think who else? Like, how about No has also experienced this. Like, I'm just brain dead when it comes to to noticing stuff like that. So like, I'm fucking terrible at riddles. I can never like make the connection, about like how like the secret hidden meaning or whatever, like verbal riddles or puns. I'm just like not good at that. So sorry. I'm not like trying to be neglectful of you or whatever. I just like I don't get it. You have to kind of sometimes you gotta like roll up the newspaper and thwack me on the head for me to understand. But anyway, you can't fool me. I go to college. Sell. JJK has decent concept, but the execution is pretty bad. Yeah, that's kind of my vibe on the series. I think I agree with you there. When Smart then says Toto is the only one who has ever benefited from an ability reveal because he lied. The gambler just has the explanation as a part of the sure hit conditions to get jackpot. I don't think I've gotten that far yet, but I'll be curious to see how that works out. Okay, so that being said, Doro Monster Card. I do like. I hope this doesn't sound sketchy or whatever, but I really do love the way that Toto says like my buraza in the Japanese, like my best friendo. Like it's so good, so charming. Okay, sorry. Yeah, Maven's greatest enemy is the Riddler. Um, I don't know if you guys are familiar with my brother and me, the podcast, but they have a segment called Riddle Me Piss, which is basically just them like finding the most terrible riddles ever and like essentially punking each other with them. It's so cathartic to know that there are other people out there that suffer as I do, although that sounds sadistic. But yeah, I guess I'm just like feeling solidarity with that. Okay, so I think I'm going to be streaming for another 45 minutes or so. In that time, I think it would be useful to see if I can address a little bit of the Toneri stuff since he's on the fucking thumbnail. So let me just take 1 second and check my notifications here. Maybe take like a 30-second mini break. Oh, cool. Six responded to a comment and was actually really nicer than I was. So I'll have to hit him up again afterwards. Yeah, appreciate that. Six and I tend to have these interactions where like I'll be like coming with my arms folded across my chest being like no, and he'll be like but maybe, and I'll be like okay, all right, sure, but okay, moving on from that, I think that the best place to start would just be to review the conversation and the stuff that came up with me and Sage. So Sage and I have been dancing around the idea of having some kind of debate or discussion or something for a while. We fucking 6-7 jump scare. Thanks, sorry. We may or may not actually do it. I'm still down for it. At this point, I'm more willing to do a debate than I was a couple of months ago. If for no other reason than to just actually have a fucking conversation. Like, and I don't mean that like to be salty, right? Like I'm saying that with emphasis because I mean like neither of us have managed to find a time that works for the other one or whatever. So if that's what it takes, if me agreeing to a debate or something as opposed to just like a one-on-one VC winds up moving things forward, then fuck it, right? Like the goal at the end of the day is to try to help people understand stuff better, and if that's the format that it winds up taking, then fine. not my preference, but I'm also not opposed to it. And I think honestly, it'd be good for me to like do more debates eventually in general. Like I think there's an opportunity for me to grow there potentially, right? So I'm open to that. Hasn't happened yet, may or may not happen. We shall see. In the meantime, I'm trying to do my best not to start shit in comments because it doesn't usually go anywhere. Um, and this could be my fault, it could be Sage's fault. I'd rather not think of it in terms of fault. I'd rather just think of it in terms of the comments section, in my experience, just isn't a great place for an exchange. But sometimes I can't help myself because I get frustrated, and also just to be totally blunt, I do think that Sage is continuing to put out bad arguments. I think he's continuing to misinform and mislead people. I think he's smart enough to be aware of what he's doing, and given all of the free feedback and help that I've provided to him that he continues to ignore over the past year or so, at this point, like, I'm not. I hope that we can reconcile. I hope that we can have a conversation and be like, oh, okay, we understand each other better. Yay. Well, but at this point, I'm not really optimistic about that. And my motivation is more to help other people who are misled by his continuing lack of curiosity, to help them better understand shit. If he winds up understanding shit better as a result, that's great. I want that too, but I'm not holding my breath for that shit anymore. So that's why some of the recent comments that I've left have been like, hey, in case anyone is curious about this or misled by this or whatever, this is what you should know, as opposed to, hey, Sage, now I am going to start shit with you. Now we're going to get into it. Like, I've thrown down the gauntlet, right? Like, so that being said, this particular video over here came out recently. Let me start off by celebrating the good things. First of all, this video is almost 2 hours long. I know that Sage uses AI tools. I know that Sage has help. I don't know if he has an editor or not, but it doesn't matter. Whatever methods he used to make this, anything, he put on a fucking movie, okay? Like, he made a movie. And this movie, shit like this takes a long time to make. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of time. And even though I might I might disagree with literally everything he says, I might actually, you don't just like spew this stuff out of nothing. Like, just look at the little video preview. Hopefully it's showing up on stream. It looks like it is. Like, you can see that there's a lot of fucking references and panels and graphics and stuff here. This was high effort, okay, in my opinion. So let's just, before we get into the fucking nitpicky stuff, let's just celebrate that in the year of our Lord today, that there are people out there in the community that are willing to make literal fucking movies explaining a series that they give a shit about, right? That's a positive thing, and I respect that. I respect the hustle, so to speak. I respect the fact that this exists in and of itself. 1 second. Orb says, another One Piece Lightspeed counter argument. Kuma pushes at Lightspeed, and to everyone he just makes people vanish. Oh, interesting. Okay. Kuma, isn't that the guy that the pacifista like walking weapons or human weapons are based off of? Sorry says, I need to ask something. I need to know if you relate. Yes, please. Shoot, fire away. Okay. That being said, what are my problems? Why did I bother leaving a comment? Well, before we jump into the video itself, I want to just go. Can I just jump directly to the comment in here? Here. Can we? 22. No, I don't think so. It's going to show up in this little panel. Okay. Let me see if I can find it, right? Hopefully it will just show up. Nope, changed my mind. Let's go and look at the actual argument that he says first, so that I'm not like, what do you call it? I don't know what the word for it is. Let's just hear it directly from him, okay? Now, this is a very, very simple, minor thing, right? Very, very tiny thing. It doesn't really matter all that much in the grand scheme of things. But my experience with Sage, just like my experience with fucking... Oh, of course this shit. Of course this shit again. We'll get to that. Don't worry. We'll get to this. But the same kind of issue that I had with him was the same issue that I wound up having with noodles, with key, right? Is that responding to them is so difficult sometimes because they will throw out a simple, tiny little phrase, and it takes them like a second or two to say the phrase out loud, but breaking down everything that's wrong with the phrase could take like an hour. Like, it takes a lot of research, takes a lot of time. And so the real objection that I have with this overall is that there's a lot of little things that get thrown out so quickly that you don't really notice how pernicious they are until later, when you realize you've gotten to the conclusion that's a result of a lot of these individual little things that built up over time. And the individual things are really problematic, but it's hard to engage with that because Sage will be like, fucking, well, it says that the moon is the moon, so it's the moon, so it's the same moon. And I'll be like, okay, but no, but look at the crust, and like look at the interior, and look at the curvature, and look at the seas, and look at the thing, right? And so like I'll go through the whole movie, and I'll post like a fucking essay, and I know it's just like takes a long time to read through it, right? But I go through the whole movie and I'll post like a whole fucking essay about like, okay, here are all of the times in the entire movie with all the timestamps that demonstrate that the interior of the moon is X, Y, or Z. And then he'll reply and be like, yeah, but I already said it's the moon, so it's the moon because they call it the moon, so it's the moon. And honestly, like, isn't that simpler than what you said? I mean, you said a whole lot of stuff, and who's got time to read that? I said one thing, and it's very, very simple. Parsimony, my friend. Parsimony, brother. And it's like, it's just like really hard to make any progress with that sort of stuff because what we essentially have here is not like really a conflict between John and Sage. We don't really even have a conflict between Naruto and Dragon Ball or whatever else. We have a conflict between curiosity and incuriosity. We have a conflict between apologetics or point clearing, as I mentioned this 1,000 times before, I know, but like apologetics and point clearing versus genuine understanding, and one comes at the expense of another. And I think that the goal of this video, as far as I can tell, is to establish Naruto over Dragon Ball, as opposed to genuinely figuring out where the shit actually is. And that kind of perspective winds up leading to like this filtering through the source, filtering through the data, and looking for all the things that you could possibly stack up to try to get to that conclusion. But the problem is that the individual little points don't work. And then when I bring this up, whether I'm talking to Sage or Key or Eon, no offense, Eon, but you know, like, it's just like they don't want to engage with the little points because they think that the overall big thing is what matters. But if the big thing is built on all these shaky foundations, then it all fucking falls apart. The analogy that I tried to use, I forget, I'm sorry if I repeated this, I mentioned this to somebody recently, is like, imagine that you and your friend are standing and you're looking at a bridge together, right? And your friend says, I'm going to walk across that bridge. I know that it's stable and it's safe to walk across the bridge because look, it's got all these pillars that are supporting it. And so you say, you go and look at the bridge and you look at the pillars and you're like, well, that pillar over there has a big crack in the middle of it, and that one's falling apart, that one's leaning over, that one's not actually even there, it's just like a shadow, and that one's like painted on in the background, so it's not there. So if you walk across that bridge, it looks like it's standing up right now, but the moment you set foot on it, it's going to fall apart because those pillars aren't actually stable, and they're not actually going to hold the bridge up. So your friend says, look, I don't know, all that shit that you just said is just a whole lot of yap. I'm looking at the bridge, and I already told you that the bridge is held up by pillars. Pillars, by definition, are support structures. Their intention is to support the structure, and the bridge is standing. So clearly, it's fine to walk across it. And so I'm like, so you tell your friend, okay, look at that bridge over there. You see that? That looks like a solid bridge, doesn't it? You see the pillars? I don't know. Okay, and then you throw a rock at that bridge and it immediately collapses. You're like, see the problem with that? We thought that that bridge was solid, and it looked solid, but then when we did a test on it, and we actually examined it closely, it fell apart, which establishes that just because bridges look solid doesn't mean that they are. We need to look closer, we need to spend more time. Yes, it's a pain in the ass. Yes, it takes a long time. Yes, it's more complicated, it takes more effort, but if we don't, we might wind up getting on the bridge that fucking falls apart underneath us, and then nobody's having a good day. or we're just in a pile of rubble. And then your friend says, no, I already told you about the fucking pillars. Look at the pillars. They're right there. Do I need to point you to the Oxford Dictionary definition of a pillar again? I was like, honestly, this is not a rhetorical question. What would you do in that situation? What would you tell that friend of yours, right? How do you get yourself to make progress in that conversation? Because that's how it feels for me sometimes, having these conversations. It's like, you realize I'm trying to help you, right? You realize that I'm not trying to shoot you down or make you feel like an idiot. I just don't want to see you walk onto that bridge and fall in the pile of rubble. And frankly, since there's a whole queue of people getting behind you that are about to hop on that bridge as well, I would really like it if you would please not lead them onto that fucking bridge. Furthermore, since we're both not idiots, since we both know how to recognize, like really we do, it's not that hard, both of us know how to recognize the difference between a shaky bridge and a solid bridge, then for the love of fuck, can't we just like work together on this and not only maybe divert the people away from this bridge, but maybe even build a new bridge, a bigger bridge, or just let them fucking go around or take a cab or something? I don't know. Like, it doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to keep doing this shit. And for some reason, I have failed. Me, myself, John. I have failed to convincingly, to argue convincingly, to convince other people to take that seriously, to care about that. I will own that and say that I have consistently lacked the ability to successfully get people to look at the bridge. Now, sometimes when I'm having a more frustrated day, I'd be like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? That's the old proverb, right? If the horse doesn't want to drink, there's nothing you can do about it. You can show them the way, but it's ultimately up to them. The horse is going to be a horse. What can you fucking do? And yes, we have now brought back the horse scaling meta. So, catching me on one particular day of the week, I might say, this isn't my fault. It's up to them at this point. Ball's in their court. Catch me on another day, and like I am today, and I might be like, no, fuck it. If I can just find the right way to phrase things, if I can just construct a better argument, if I could just like change the lighting, change the angle, I could just make them see. I feel like I'm so close. I've like researched this so much. I've like put so much time and effort into this. I'm so close. It's just like one little final ingredient to make the dish complete, and I just can't find it. And I keep trying a different ingredient like this and that. I keep trying, and it just doesn't go, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So please, anybody who's listening to this, whoever you are, tell me what it is that I should be doing to be more persuasive to get this across. If that just means that my arguments are all total dog shit, and then I have to accept that, then I'm open to that. I don't think that's the case. I think I've done my homework. I sincerely think I've earned my stripes here. You know, I'm working hard at this for a couple of years now, but I could still be wrong. But the other option, of course, is that the horse just won't fucking drink, and in that case, I need to leave that fucking horse alone, right? Like, I need to go away from that horse. So that may just be the only option. We shall see. Horse prophecies not yet resolved. Let me go ahead and catch up on chat. Orb says the main differences you can use to tell the difference between Kuma and the Pacifista is his gloves, his paw pads, and his Bible, and is easy to tell in the first 3 pages of chapter 513. That is very interesting. Okay, now I'm definitely committing to getting through that soon. Sorry, says, full disclosure, I'm reiterating this purely because you laughed about it, and I don't want you to get yourself worked up, so I figured a laugh can help. Please, I need this in my life. Please, don't hesitate. I would love to hear it. Orb says Naruto Moon is canonically hollow. Yeah, I agree 100%. Also, parsimonious doesn't mean simpler to say. It's making the least assumptions. Right. It's like, if I think the idea, it kind of like overlaps with Occam's razor, right? If there are two, we should tend to prefer explanations that are less complex, less convoluted, and less open-ended. And we should tend to prefer those that are simpler, more elegant, and have fewer moving parts, essentially. You know, probably like y equals, when you see like Einstein, like that picture from with like that massive board of all these calculations and things, and then he's just pointing to y equals mc squared, right? Like that part of the beauty and elegance and profound effectiveness of not y equals mc squared, fuck me, E equals mc squared. Jesus Christ, sorry, I apologize to the entirety of science and math for that one. E equals mc squared. So getting confused with y equals mx plus b. E equals mc squared is like, it's like beautiful, it's so simple, it's so perfect. It's just like it has nothing more than it needs to. It explains everything it needs to so elegantly, so well, and it comes out of all of this like extremely detailed, extensive research. But in and of itself, it is extremely simple, and I think we should aspire to that sort of thing. But sometimes things are really fucking complicated and really messy and really weird and awkward and counterintuitive and require a lot of work and require a lot of checking preconceived notions and stuff like that. Right? It's like, sorry, this is inconvenient. Sorry, really sorry. Sometimes you don't just get like freebies. Sometimes things aren't just as straightforward. And just saying like, no, I want this to be simpler. I don't want this to be more complicated. It's more appealing to me if there's less moving parts. Sorry, fucking, it doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't matter. What matters is whether or not the evidence actually holds up to scrutiny, whether it works diegetically and in context, not whether or not looking at it stresses you out. Sorry, it doesn't help anybody to be like, wah, I don't want to deal with it because it's complicated. And I'm sorry if I'm being unkind, but like, it genuinely feels like that sometimes. Like, fucking, I don't want to deal with this because it's too much. Okay, then maybe just shut up. Again, I'm sorry. I know I'm being spicy, but like, if you don't want to put in the requisite amount of effort to genuinely understand something, maybe stop talking about it and let somebody, not let somebody else, but like, stop talking about it publicly to the extent where you're going to like mislead other people and let your own lack of curiosity also spread to other people, right? Like, if you're not prepared to earn the stripes, then don't fucking like just like have a little humility and take a step back for a second. Is that so rude to say? I don't know. I think it's like there should be a little bit more willingness to not to let myself be too positive right here. The fact that this video is really long and has a lot of effort and time invested in it is cool, but also if like all the arguments are based on the same quality of argumentation as what I'm about to cover, it kind of doesn't matter, right? Like, it does. It's impressive. It's cool. I'd like to see more of it. I'd like to see more of this effort and dedication. And also, like, if all that effort and dedication goes to misleading people, then, like, cool, why are we even here? Like, what's the point, right? Am I being unfair? Am I being too fucking, like, rude? Please tell me. I don't think so. I don't think so. Let's see. Sage was content, says Ursa, with using the chakra-laden bone statement on me instead of providing a proper translation that actually explicitly explained that the chakra user was amplifying himself word for word. Yeah, he has a tendency to do that because he can clear the point because his is more likely. And I'm sure when you see, if you haven't seen his comment already, you'll probably resonate with this too, right? You would slap my friend because words aren't enough to convince them, so Sage is not curious about whether he's wrong, and it might be a lot of things, most of all money, though. Ball is always in their court, John. The boat is empty. In Buddhism, we'd call this clinging to views, believing just because your argument is good that they'll listen. Sometimes people need force, and no one needs to be forced to think differently about anime. That's a good point. You know what? I'll just be honest. I always try to be honest, but, like, I'll be, what's the term for it? Revealing or personal or something? That, like, I mentioned this before, so it's not any great revelation, but like, I really like Naruto a lot, and I really like talking to people about Naruto and connecting with them. And so a big part of my motivation, genuinely at my core, is just like being able to point to this thing and be like, dude, you see this thing too, right? And it's so cool that it's this way, right? And then them being able to be like, dude, yeah, I totally see it that way. Isn't that awesome? Like, I really want that. Now, that doesn't mean that that makes my arguments invalid because I have an emotional investment in it. It also doesn't mean that my arguments are better because I have some kind of a goal that's noble or whatever. None of that shit matters, right? The arguments themselves will stand or fall or on their own merits or lack thereof. But genuinely, like, I just want to connect about cool shit that I like with other people who I think are like-minded. It's really why I do any of this shit at the end of the day. And I think I need to be more realistic with myself about whether or not, like what I said before about, like, well, if I could just find the right phrase, if I could just find the right wording or use the right argument, that's not really how it works, though. And I know that. I know that, like, for whatever reason, and it doesn't, like, the concept of blame doesn't really matter. The concept, like, applying labels to like that doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, for whatever reason, there will be some things that I just won't agree with other people on, and that doesn't need to be taken personally, and it doesn't need to be a consistent bone of contention, and it is okay to walk away and just let it go. I'm not good at that. I don't like that. I don't like letting shit go because it sticks in my fucking craw, and I don't want to let it go until I've resolved it, because that's the way I am. I need to get it fixed. I need to fix the thing because it's broken and it needs to be fixed, and I won't take no for an answer until it's done. And that is something that has been part of my life for as long as I can remember. And I know that shit just doesn't work sometimes. Regardless of it's my fault, Sage's fault, or anybody else's fault, it's nobody's fault. It's just like, it's just not how it works factually. So that's a very good point. My friend Patrick would say, like, practice non-attachment, right? Like, he's deep into Buddhism, and he's like tried to impart some of his wisdom on me. You take a step back and not get so attached to it. It's hard, it's frustrating when I see other people then falling into the same traps, and I see the ideas spreading and more people fighting each other, and I'm like, I have to try to do something. But you're right, like, there's an amount of emotional investment that I've put um into this that I think it would probably be healthier if I were less attached to certain things, right? So I think, and no one needs to be forced, right? I don't need to force anybody else to think differently. That's right. I can try, and then if it doesn't work, then I need to move on. I'm gonna take those words to heart. Until the next noodles debate comes out, and then I'm gonna fucking like rage about it for 5 hours again. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Sawyer says, so I was reading The Dawning of Three, part of the Dark Tower series, as I said in Cap server, and one of the kids made me sad, and my girlfriend asked what was wrong. I said nothing. She responded with, you can put your face in my ass but not talk about your feelings. And I was like, well, one of those things is a lot easier. You're 100% based. Yes, absolutely. I don't know if I should say exactly the dialogue that I had, but my first partner, the person that I would escape to IHOP with, she was very, very bashful about bringing something up to me. She was very ashamed. It was something minor. It was just like some minor thing. I don't even remember what it was. It's so minor. But she was really self-conscious about it for whatever reason. And I essentially was like, look, I have done, and then I described something like what you described, and we have done this together on multiple occasions. There's pretty much no part of us that the other one hasn't seen at this point. So you're not gonna surprise me. You're not gonna scare me away. And if for whatever reason I'm grossed out by it, just remind me that I did X, and then I have no leg to stand on, right? So yes, it's actually genuinely endearing how like moments like that can bring you closer together. Um, yes, I am still laughing. I really do appreciate you sharing that with me, sincerely. Um, Ursa says, John, drink. I don't care if water scares you. You're thirsty, right? Sage the horse. Bro, it's easier to die than face my fears. I'm just gonna be thirsty, bro. Parsimony and all that. Yeah. I don't... To be fair, it's not like him maintaining these positions has hurt his channel at all. Right? He continues to grow, and hey, good for you. Please, keep making the progress and growing the stuff. Like, that's the thing. I don't want to see anybody I disagree with decrease in any way. In my mind, and again, perhaps this is very naive of me, perhaps this is arrogant, I'm willing to acknowledge that, but in my mind, when I talk about this stuff, how I envision things playing out is somebody says something I disagree with, I say, here is my view, and why I think that is a bone of contention. Then they will respond and say, well, here's why I think you might be wrong, and I'll consider that and come back, and then eventually one of us will be like, oh, okay, I get it. This is different than I thought. It doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter if it's me or the other person. And then we'll shake hands, and then we'll move forward. And then that will lead to mutual growth and understanding. And then that will be correlated with, like, I have no plans to grow my channel. I don't promote it anywhere. I don't, like, share my videos. I used to post them in Sage's server. I don't do that in anybody else's server, really. I don't even, like, post it to my friends on Facebook or whatever. I just, like, go on live. I post in our Discord, and that's it, right? So I already am quite content with the size of my channel. If Sage wants to continue growing his channel and growing his community, that's great. I hope he does. I hope he succeeds. I just think that he could do that while making better arguments, right? So, I don't know. Have to do something, John. Just know what you're doing now is enough. Thank you. That genuinely means a lot. And honestly, oh wait, hang on. Sorry, I missed something. Never give up on trying to clarify the truth. You're not being rude. However, let go of changing anyone. Show the horse to water and leave it be. Yes, that is actually a very good distinction. You're pretty fucking smart. Has nobody ever told you that? I appreciate your perspective on that. Thank you. John, you think talk no jutsu works IRL? But that's it. That's just it, right? You hit the nail on the fucking head. Like, that's the core message of Naruto. That, like, talk no jutsu gets memed on so heavily, but it's like one of the most important parts of the whole fucking series is just being able to suspend the interpersonal frustration or animosity or whatever you want to call it, and like really get to the core of something and resolve. That's what the story is really about to me. And so if I didn't at least try, I feel like I wouldn't even be like representing the value of the story correctly in a way. So it means a lot that you recognize that you should eat your channel. Did you mean to write you should eat your channel and ass? Or to eat your channel and us? I will eat my channel and drink ass, and I'm all out of ass. So please feel free to clip that. It's going to be my legacy. Okay, so I got 20 minutes or so before I should go check in with Walkie Talkie Dudes. So before that happens, let me, and also I should rest my voice before starting on another fucking stream. But let me just address this argument. And I promise we'll talk about this more because we're not going to have time for all this stuff. But like, as you can see through some of my tabs, I have Zodiac stuff pulled up. I also have Ecliptic stuff pulled up. I have Constellation stuff pulled up. I have this Constellation Simulator thing pulled up. And there's a reason for all this. And we'll talk about it on Sunday if we don't get to it today. Because frankly, this is one of the most fun that I have with these streams. As much as I enjoy being like dunking on like Noodles or whatever, being like he mispronounced Tsukuyomi again, right? Like what I really like is fucking when a piece of a discussion can then lead to learning stuff, like other stuff. So I've been boning up a little on like Zodiac and on Chinese astronomy and stuff like that. So I think I will continue to do that. And then on Sunday, sorry to like kind of give you false hope for the stream, Saria, but Sunday we'll actually talk some more astronomy stuff. But anyway, let's just listen to Sage's thing over here real quick. So this is his video, Adult Naruto and Sasuke versus Dragon Ball. As always, go check it out on his channel. Watch the whole video, come to your own conclusions, leave him a like and a sub if you would like to. Don't let my opinions bias whether or not you contribute to his channel. That's up to you. Now, that being said, he is going to be talking about Toneri and Urashiki, and essentially the argument is that Urashiki moves really, really, really fast. He's a quick boy, and we're gonna just start from there. Okay, so yeah. Also, I think the other person talking is Steven, aka Miyaboku Merchant. I forget if he spells it Miyaboku or Miyoboku, but anyway.
You're going to want to sit back, especially with how a lot of yous feel about Naruto speed scaling. We had to discuss why they're not relativistic in this video.
Yeah, yeah, so...
Okay, wait, I want to just make sure that I'm not cutting anything off, right? And to be fair, like, I need to... Like, I kind of skimmed this, right? A lot of this I just kind of, like, tabbed through or watched at 2x speed or whatever because I was trying to get a sense of where this was at, and the video came out yesterday. I worked today, so I haven't gone through it all. So just big fucking grain of salt, right? I still need to watch all this in context. It's entirely possible that everything I'm about to say that Sage debunks later, okay? Just to be totally transparent.
Term specifically is a mathematical scientific term.
Okay, so we're not going to deal with that right now.
It can be used hyperbolically to bolster the Julie. The Koji and Jigen thing is under being around.
This is not what I
creates a tapestry of feats and statements. or B appears to be pointing to Universal plus Naruto and is. I think the second conclusion
We'll get to that later, don't worry.
is more reasonable and clearly consistent, so that will be our mid ball in terms of AP.
In terms of speed, the mid ball also jumps up massively from the low ball we gave. If you stood up during the universal scaling, you're going to want to sit back, especially with how a lot of yous feel about Naruto speed scaling. We had to discuss why they're not relativistic in this video.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to be discussing whether or not Naruto characters are relativistic. That's fine. Let's just pause for a second and observe what we are seeing here. We see two stars flashing in the background, or like they're called out, they're highlighted, whatever. They're brighter than the ones in the background. And we see text on the bottom of the screen that says, "The comet has entered the constellation." Okay, so let's just keep that in mind for now.
So, in episode 8 of the Boruto anime, which is directly and heavily worked on by Kishimoto and Kodachi,
Okay, so I'm gonna skip it, like nitpicking about that quote for now.
episode 8 of the Boruto anime, which is
I like that he at least says episode 8.
directly and heavily worked on by Kishimoto and Kodachi. We see Urashiki likened to a comet traveling across the night sky searching for Toneri.
Okay, so again, we see Urashiki likened to a comet traveling across the night sky.
We know that this is Urashiki because Toneri later references him as the celestial body he's addressing here.
Okay, I'm gonna just play that one more time. Right, listen to all the words.
Is directly and heavily worked on by Kishimoto and Kodachi. We see Urashiki likened to a comet
and he is likened to a comet
traveling across the night sky.
Okay, so let's stop for a second and just talk about what we are seeing here, right? At least he mentioned what episode that this is happening in, right? What we actually see here is we see a comet, right? And it very quickly moves over the course of a few frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, okay, whatever, doesn't matter, right? A second or two moves from the right side of the screen to the left side of the screen, and then it's gone, right? So really, if we try to step back and start from a neutral hypothesis, we don't even know for sure what this thing is. We just see this flash of light going from right to left, and now we're going to try to figure out what it is. Is it a comet, like a regular normal-ass comet? Is it a fucking planet? Is it an Otsutsuki? Is it some kind of a jutsu? We don't know, right? So let's see, how do we explain what this is? How do we understand what's happening here? Let's see what Sage has to say.
Across the night sky, searching for Toneri.
Okay, so after the fucking comet goes across, we then see these two little stars light up, and then we have text that says the comet has entered the constellation. Okay, it's going to be revealed later that this is coming from Toneri. Let's just keep going for now.
We know that this is Urashiki because Toneri later references him as the celestial body he's addressing here.
Okay, so we know that this is Urashiki because Toneri calls the comet a celestial body later on. That's what he's saying.
Now, Urashiki arrives in the Cancer constellation.
Urashiki arrives, quote unquote, in the Cancer constellation,
which we can see here, along with the Gemini constellation right next to it, as it should be. Now, where
where those constellations are, okay?
path leads to seems to be somewhere in the middle of these two stars here, which would be right around the beehive cluster. Now, what's important about this is it grants us workable values for the zoomed out frame of Urashiki zipping across the sky. Based on the distance he covers here, I've gained a range of values, which are all absurdly high. Since he's stated to have entered the Cancer constellation and he's actively looking for Toneri, it's most pragmatic to assume that he's not coming from Toneri's direction, but rather from the opposite side, or potentially from the right of it.
Okay, so this is something that's going to require us to resume on Sunday, but I wanted to bring it up. It says, I'm glad I know this is about astronomy and not astrology, because as an astrophysics student, the amount of times my girlfriend will be like, oh, it's because you're a Scorpio. yeah, it's actually about astronomy and astrology, so it's going to be a bit of an emotional whirlwind for you. She does it on purpose, but then I'm like, I can't be mad at her, damn it, and then I have to go do some gymnastic videos to let off steam. What a great way to blow off steam, honestly. And, like, I want to give you a shout out again, like, even if you hadn't gone through all of the amazing, like, healing and PT work that you have done, like, the shit that you do is insanely impressive and awesome, but adding that narrative onto it, it's just all the more impressive. It's so cool to see you, like, can I be a little poetic for a second? Like, to spread your wings. It's fucking awesome to see you, like, pull off those maneuvers, dude. I hope you keep on doing it, and I'm glad that it's, like, a source of like actualization, a source of joy for you, and not like a grind. So yeah, like fucking massive, massive respects, big shout out. Okay, so here's the reason why I'm coming back to this. Sage made this same argument basically a year ago when he was talking to Six in his Boruto versus Gohan video. And it was the same clips that were used, and it was the same things that were represented. Now, let me, again, this is hard to show, and I will get the clips for Sunday, so bear with me. But let me try to at least show you part of what actually happens in this scene so that you understand a little bit more about Toneri before I get into the debunk, right? I have to keep the audio off. Well, maybe I don't. Hopefully I won't get copyright claimed, right? So shout out to Anime Diamond. This is the clip is uploaded to their channel. Here we see Toneri saying, nothing remains unchanged. Faint is always flowing. Okay, so this is where he's like mending the gaps in space-time, as people call them, the cracks in space-time, right? Okay, so this is not necessarily directly related. It's just a clip that I think is useful for context, right? I think he talks about destiny. He talks about shouldering fate. He talks about being the light that pierces through the darkness. He also talks about fucking like the terminology that he uses is consistently kind of like how would I describe it? Esoteric is one way to put it. You know, in the Boruto X Connections game, he talks about like portents of doom and portents of danger. He talks about celestial decrees, right? He speaks in this kind of archaic dialect, etc. So I think here's where he says something about shouldering fate.
Guide you.
Here, let's see.
Light which will dispel darkness.
The light which will dispel darkness.
But who are you?
Boruto Uzumaki. The eye you possess is a star of hope against
the eye you possess is a star of hope.
Approaching destruction.
Okay, so this isn't directly related, but it is sort of, I'm providing this context to establish like who Toneri is, like how he thinks, how he talks, etc., right? So let's see, this isn't what I was hoping to find. So bear with me 1 second. This is leading somewhere. And this stuff I will bring up again in our next stream. So let's see. Okay, you get a little preview of all the stuff I'm going to be talking about. Hope you enjoy that. So this is the scene, I think, that Sage is referencing. This is the only clip I could find for it for tonight. I will get the full clip later. So what happens in this scene actually is the camera starts off on the ground and essentially pans up to the moon, right? Hopefully it's a Japanese audio. Pans up to the moon, zoom in. And from the moon, we look at the constellations from the perspective of like the POV of being on the moon, right? And we can recognize, according to Sage, the constellation is what Gemini and Cancer. So we're seeing constellations that appear to be in the same overall orientation and distribution as if we were viewing them from the Earth. Hey, there it goes. There's a comet.
The comet has entered the constellation of Cancer.
So interestingly, what Toneri says here is the comet has entered the constellation of Cancer, which is supported by the subtitles. So this is not a big deal, but it is interesting to me that like the subtitles here are different. I don't think that really matters, but it's like just something to point out, right?
The destiny of the stars.
So he talks about destiny, the destiny of the stars, right? And he's clearly like looking up in that direction, right?
The time for the harvest is near.
Time for the harvest is near.
And as I thought,
he
is the key.
He is the key. So one final piece of context to provide, and this is something that I'm going to need to get a clip for you for next time. In Japanese, what he says specifically is when the comet crosses overhead, he says, Kishuku ni hokiboshi ga haita. Sorry to Japanese speakers for my terrible pronunciation. Once again, that's Kishuku ni hokiboshi ga haita. Kishuku is not the constellation of Cancer, for what it's worth. Kishuku is the constellation of the Ghost, which refers to Chinese astronomy, not astrology specifically, but astronomy. And it is part of one of the 28 houses of constellations, which I'll explain more on Sunday. It is roughly analogous to the constellation of Cancer in Western tradition, but it's not synonymous with it because it does hold a different cultural and historical significance in like Chinese astronomy. So it's not exactly one-to-one, but I understand why they picked Cancer because it's like something that the Western audience is more likely to understand, and it's like sort of close enough, right? Kishuku ni hokiboshi. Hokiboshi is an archaic term for comet. A more commonly used term is suisei, suisei, if I'm pronouncing that right. But hokiboshi is a more archaic, lesser used form of that same term, and it uses the same kanji that are used in Chinese to refer to something called the broom star, which is also part of that same like constellation of the ghost, etc. Like part of that same tradition. Specifically, that broom star, and again, sources pending, I know, but I will bring them on Sunday. That broom star is a portent and an augur of things to come. So what Toneri is doing here is he is specifically referencing a specific term that evokes a tradition, like a historical, cultural, and I guess you could say mythological, astronomical tradition of using a comet as a portent for something to come in the future. He's looking at this thing and saying, okay, cool, I see that. I see that the comet has, quote unquote, entered this constellation, and because of that, I can predict that something else is going to happen later. Based on this event, I know that there is going to be a subsequent event later. He never refers to this comet as a person, or as a celestial being, or as a celestial body, or as kamigami, which is a term that he uses to refer to the Otsutsuki, right? He just calls it a comet. And what we see in the sky appears to be a comet. It has the same appearance, has the same overall, like, let me see, comet footage. Let me just see if I can find a footage of some fucking comet, right? Maybe this one. Well, this is a meteorite. It's not quite the same as what I'm looking for. Maybe this one? Or this is loud. Okay, so this is kind of what, like, a comet looks like. You can probably find much better photographs and stuff like that on your own, and I'll try to find some better ones for next time as well. But essentially, what a comet is, if you're not familiar, is a ball of rock and ice and metal and dust. Here's a good example, right? In the sky, that is essentially, as it gets closer to the sun, it heats up, and without getting too specific about it, the heating causes this plume, this tail to form behind it, and it gives it this bright glowing appearance. We can also look at like shooting star, right? Shooting stars go past faster. They are similar, but shooting stars are meteorites that come through our atmosphere and burn up. So they pass through much more quickly. And if you go up to see like a meteor shower, right, what you're seeing is, yeah, that's a good example, right? A meteor is a chunk of rock usually that passes into our atmosphere and then burns up and then quickly goes away. So comparing this to what Toneri is seeing, it actually looks a lot more like a shooting star because of how fleeting it is and how quickly it goes across the screen. But he does use the term suisei to refer to it as a comet. Now, I'm bringing all this up because what Sage says in his video is that this is actually Toneri. And what Toneri is doing is he specifically enters inside of the constellation of Cancer. And his interpretation of this is that Toneri himself is this comet, and that he specifically, as a person, has just now crossed into the constellation. The problem with that is that a constellation in and of itself is not like a thing per se. In other words, a constellation is an image, like a pareidolia style image that somebody projects onto the sky from their perspective. They see an arrangement of dots and they essentially connect the dots in their mind and they're like, okay, this resembles this image. And they say, I'm going to refer to this particular grouping of stars that I can see from my perspective at my time as this thing. And different cultures, different societies at different parts of the development of human history have identified different clusters of stars in the same area of the sky and have grouped them up and identified them and separated them differently, because there's no inherent, like, it's not like, okay, these stars necessarily have this relationship to one another in a grand, like, these are necessarily part of the same system or whatever, right? These could be any number of different stars of different sizes, different shapes, compositions, etc. The only unifying thing between them is that we have projected this hypothetical image onto them from our perspective to help us recognize them. So essentially, we are tracing a fake shape around them that only works from our perspective. If we changed our perspective, if we changed our orientation, if we were at a different part of the solar system, if we were on a different planet, right, different time of year, 100,000 million years ago, whatever, then the constellations would look different because the positions of the stars and our relationship to them would change. So this is very important to know. So what does it mean to enter a constellation, right? Well, nothing really, because the constellation is not like it's not like saying something entered a galaxy or entered the solar system, right? You can essentially draw a sphere or an ovoid around our solar system and say, like, okay, if we define, like, I don't know, the edge of the Oort cloud or something, or like just pick some kind of distant object that orbits around our sun, like find the most distant object that orbits around our sun and say, okay, that is the furthest limit of our solar system. Everything inside of a big ass sphere inside of that is our solar system. You could say that something enters our solar system when it crosses that invisible bounding sphere, right? When it crosses into that border. But the borders defined by a constellation are completely arbitrary. They're based on whatever the person looking at them has defined as the image that they're projecting onto it. And because we don't know without like actually examining the stars in greater detail, we don't know how far away those stars are from each other, like how they're scattered around or whatever, you know, which ones are closer or further, which ones are bigger or smaller, without further investigation. There is no easily traceable or easily recognizable three-dimensional space or three-dimensional like bounding sphere, bounding area that's analogous to our solar system. So when Toneri here is saying that the comet has entered the constellation, he's referring to the same sort of astronomical principle as the sun entering the constellations in Western zodiac. So I had this up before. Let me do a brief tangent on this. So Western ecliptical fucking zodiac, something like that. I had the video before. Yeah, this one here. Okay, let's watch this real quick. Just a couple minutes long. I'm just checking to see if walkie-talkie haven't started yet. Okay, cool. So let's just watch this. This is on Your Pals. Shout out to Your Pals.
What are zodiacal constellations?
Let
Where
me
are
boost
they
this.
located? The Earth revolves around the Sun on its own orbital plane. The plane in which the Earth orbits the Sun is called the ecliptic. The ecliptic intersects
So basically simple stuff, right? Earth around the sun.
at roughly the middle point of the celestial sphere. The circle of the ecliptic is divided into 12 equal parts. Zodiacal constellations are located in the belt of this intersection.
So from a Western perspective, the Western zodiac symbols that we identify are groups and clusters of stars that help us apportion and divide up the map of the heavens or whatever, right? The celestial sphere as we see it from our perspective. As the Earth rotates around the sun over the course of the year, we see these particular shapes in the sky, and the sun intersects with these shapes in different ways at different times, and we can observe this this cycle as periodic, as repetitive. It happens every year basically the same way, right?
The zodiac circle traditionally starts on the spring equinox.
And this next part is going to help a lot, I think.
The sun moving in the Pisces constellation marks the beginning of the zodiac circle.
Right, so at this part of the year, from our perspective, if we look through from our perspective towards this constellation, the sun is in the way. So the sun is in the constellation.
During the year, the sun enters all 12 constellations.
So notice the phrasing there, right? Like over the course of the year, as our like relationship with respect to the sun changes, the apparent position that the sun occupies in the sky with respect to the constellation changes. It enters and exits, and it does this in a pause. Sorry, in a way that is repeated and recognizable and consistent and divisible into the months of the year. Like obviously the zodiac signs can correlate to your the month in which you were born. In the West, anyway. Okay, so notice how it's going through. So, granted, there's a bunch more that I need to talk about to explain this, but the gist of it is that throughout human history, throughout various societies, people have looked up at the stars and the sun and the moon and stuff like eclipses and the cycles of the moon and like passing through fucking celestial objects, and they've been like, huh, it really looks like some of those things in the sky look like things down here on Earth. I bet that's significant. Let's apply a name to this. Let's apply an image to this. Let's study this. Oh, it looks like there are repeated cycles of things that happens. We can then use those repeated cycles to tell time, for example, or to divide, like to get a sense of like what a year is, what a day is, etc., what a month is. Gradually, over time, we build up an understanding of the passage of time based on the observation of these celestial things, and we can use these repetitive cycles to signify that things are going to happen at specific times. When things like comets show up, comets, if you're not familiar, are also objects that revolve around other objects. So, for example, comets in our solar system revolve around the sun. They get closer to the sun, they start flaring up, they start showing off the light and the gas, and it lights up and it's big and cool. And then they go away, and then we see less of that, right? So they go around in periodic cycles. And if you notice a comet in the sky, you're going to be like, holy shit, that's kind of an extreme event. That's kind of an impressive thing. And if you notice it coming around and again, you're going to be able to use that as part of essentially a star calendar, a star clock, to be able to build up a sense of what is happening around you, right? In terms of like the passage of longer periods of time. And we can predict like when the next iteration of like Hale-Bopp comet or whatever is going to come around. So, that being said, if you put all of the, and I've only really scratched the surface here, but if you put all of the cultural context together here and examine what Toneri's doing, he's standing on a planet, he's looking up on the moon, he's looking up at the stars, his whole thing is like fate and prophecy and destiny and shifting and like the guiding stars. It literally says like fucking your eye is going to be like the guiding star or whatever, right? He looks up, he sees a comet pass in front of a constellation. He uses the term entered the constellation, which is a term that is used in the description of these sorts of astronomical events. He specifically uses a term that refers to Chinese astronomy. And then he says, based on this event that is happening now, later on, something else is going to happen that we can predict, and then that prediction comes true. So this person used a celestial event to predict a future event. That's what happened. And like, it's not really all that hard to understand. Like, I didn't really need to tell you all that stuff and go down this extremely long path, right? One second. I need to respond to something. Okay, so yeah, so that's basically where we're at, right? I could have just said this dude tells prophecies and shit and he saw a comet, and that would have been enough. But I'm giving you all that context because with the context, with understanding what the specific terms are that are being used, what the references are, what their cultural context is, and just a tiny little bit about what comets are and how they work, you can put this all together and you can look at this and be like, oh, okay, so he's basically like using this as sort of like a celestial calendar almost. He's like trying to predict this thing that's going to happen, and it does happen. Now let's go back to what Sage says. So his interpretation is that instead of this, keeping in mind that what Toneri has to do is like jack shit, right? His whole population is gone. Just a bunch of puppets that I don't think he can control anymore. He specifically put himself into exile on the moon. He doesn't talk to people on Earth. His whole thing is he just hangs out and watches the stars and watches what happens on Earth to protect it. I guess he also holds back the cracks in space-time. Okay. But he's on the moon. He doesn't have to really deal with light pollution apart from the Earth shine. And he gets to stare at the sky all day, right? So he's looking at the stars and he sees this event happen. And he sees something that he tells us is a comet, and he uses the term comet. He doesn't use like kami or kamigami. He doesn't use whatever the word for, I forget, for like celestial being is. he uses the term celestial elsewhere, like celestial decree. He uses the term celestial being in description of Urashiki when Urashiki shows up, but he calls this a comet. And Sage's perspective is what? That instead of all that, what makes more sense is that the comet, that what we see is Urashiki, and Urashiki just screamed across the entire cosmos and then like went into the Cancer constellation and then popped out the other side. So the fucking Urashiki just like, keeping in mind that if that's the case, Urashiki, like, the amount of light that he would be casting off, that he would be generating by doing this.
And heavily worked.
1 second, that's probably way too loud. The amount of light that he would be generating by doing this, remember, he would need to, right, like, those stars that are supposedly in the Cancer constellation are back there. Those stars are way fucking more massive than a person, right? So in order to be, if this is actually Urashiki, you can compare the luminosity of this to the luminosity in the stars in the background. He is closer to the camera's POV than these stars. Or if he's not, he's like, if he's actually near them, he's generating like vastly more light than these stars, and we're seeing that from so far away. The implications of that are like ridiculous. We can talk about that separately. Setting aside the fact that if he is actually this far away, we have to account for the amount of time that the light takes to get from its current location to our point of view, which is ridiculous as well. But let's set that aside for now. Let's keep going.
The night sky, searching for Toneri. We know that this is Urashiki because Toneri later references him as the celestial body he's addressing here.
This is my problem. At the end of the day, this is my big problem. Is that what Sage says specifically is Toneri references him as the celestial body. But he doesn't. He doesn't say celestial body. He doesn't say that in the English. He doesn't say that in the Japanese. He also doesn't say that in the subtitles of either version. He says celestial being. So what Sage has done here is he said, okay, I see this thing before, and it's a comet, right? Toneri calls it a comet. But for my purposes, it's better if it's Urashiki. And technically speaking, a comet could be called a celestial body. Toneri says celestial being, which is kind of like celestial body. So if I just say that what Toneri said was actually celestial body, I can smear the definition of those two things and say that Toneri was calling the comet the same thing as this. So that's what's happened here. Sage has inserted his own term, celestial body, which is not one that Toneri is using. He didn't care enough to actually look up the actual term that Toneri is using, or to be curious about the cultural significance of any of that, right? Or to actually look into the astronomy or what the, like, how comets are, how they work, how they relate to any of this stuff, consider the distance or light, and then none of that shit gets brought up at all, right? But because you can smear the definition of celestial being into celestial body, and you can smear the definition of celestial body into comet, you can get away with this if you mention it really fast and don't think about it too much. So before I wrap up for tonight, let me just check this message real quick. Okay, before I wrap up and finish for the night, I want to just point you guys to this comment exchange that we had, right? And again, you can tell me what you think. You can tell me if you think I'm being unfair or whatever. I have a feeling that we're probably going to agree on a lot of this stuff, but now we have kind of come full circle, like the comet going around its elliptical orbit, right? All the way back to the initial thing that we were talking about with Eon, right? So I didn't post a comment saying, hey, Sage, this is why you're stupid and I'm smart and here's all your mistakes, because whatever, right? Like, we're going to talk about it in person or on Discord, or we're not. I'm not going to change his mind in the fucking comment section, right? But this person here said, Naruto shouldn't be billions of times FTL because of two reasons, etc. Urashiki came through the Cancer constellation, etc. He's talking about, like, the passage of time, the amount of episodes, etc. And he's also pointing out that Sage didn't really correctly represent the passage of time in the stuff that he showed. So in an attempt to sympathize with Spider Sonic over here and to provide some more context for his concern, this is what I wrote. What actually happened in the scene is that Toneri was stargazing and saw a comet pass in front of him, overhead, then out of view. He says the comet has entered the constellation of the Ghost, analogous to Cancer in Western astrology, meaning the comet he's currently looking at has entered the bounds of the constellation above him. That's what we talked about before, right? He's viewing the comet as an augur/portent. Later, Urashiki shows up, and Toneri refers to him as a celestial being, which is a completely different word from what he uses to describe the comet. It should have been comet. This is a typo. The word used to describe Urashiki is this, Amatsubito, right? Very different from Suisei or from Hokiboshi. The term used for the comet is Hokiboshi. Ram just means Romaji, romanization, right? Broom star, an archaic uncommon term for comet. Also was brought up in the video he did a year ago. So, okay, so basically I just kind of repeated what I said here in the video that we are talking about now. It was a summary of this comment over here. And I would like to, you can also see the, I don't know why this posted double. Sorry about that. That was not my intention. Yeah, it was only meant to post once. I'll reload this, and if it's still posted double, then I'll delete the double. That was not my intention. You can read my response here. It's basically what I've already said. Feel free to scrutinize this if you like. That being said, this is what Sage replies with. This is your interpretation. You're allowed to have it. Gee, thanks. I appreciate that I have your endorsement, but I think you're the one stripping away context. Literally not once is an Otsutsuki called a celestial being by anyone outside of this particular instance. That's significant. Also, the comet itself arriving there wouldn't be significant unless it's Urashiki. The best you could do here is invoke an ad hoc explanation to make up some unsupported reason. It's an omen of some kind, lol, as to why a random comet dashing across the sky would signify anything about the Otsutsuki's arrival. How is it connected to the Otsutsuki? Why does it signify their arrival? When was this astrological clock introduced? Your interpretation creates questions while attempting to provide answers. However, since my interpretation perfectly explains the relevance of the comet, as well as everything else, and relies on fewer assumptions, it's got greater explanatory power than yours, while being more parsimonious and thus is more reasonable, etc. Okay, so let me just conclude here by trying to identify, and I break this down over here, but trying to identify what happened here. This is my interpretation. Yes, it is. You're allowed to have it. Yes, I am. But I think you're the one stripping away context. That's fair to say if you genuinely believe that, but notice right away that we've moved away from acknowledging whether or not, that we have to be careful about language like this because ultimately Sage is the one putting forward the argument in the first place. I'm responding to it, and if he wants to criticize my own lack of providing context, that's fair game, it's fair play, but at the same time, I could be talking out of my ass this entire time, and that wouldn't, and like him pointing that out wouldn't actually address the problem with his initial point. Literally not once is an Otsutsuki called a celestial being by anyone. Well, Sage volunteered this notion, but didn't actually provide any support for it. I don't have the time over the past 24 hours to go through the entire series to verify this, so I just have to take this on faith. But whatever, for the sake of not being a total dick, I'll just accept this on faith that the Otsutsuki is never called a celestial being by anyone outside of this particular instance. That's significant, but how so? In what way? How does that actually address the topic? I'm not seeing how that actually addresses the point. When Toneri, and I'll find this clip for you on Sunday, when Toneri fucking talks to Urashiki, he calls him celestial being, and Urashiki responds by saying, oh, we're from the same clan, you don't need to call me that, it's cool. Which indicates that this term is a term of formality that's used in the Otsutsuki clan. And Urashiki's just like letting him off the hook by not using it. So yeah, it is significant because it specifically is a term that is meant to signify the like class and power differential between these two people. And Urashiki's like, whatever, fine, right? So yeah, it's significant. There's a reason why he's using this term, and he's using it because of that significance. And there's a reason why he's using this term specifically to refer to Urashiki and not to refer to the comet, right? He's a fucking stargazing alien descendant. He knows the difference between a comet and a celestial person, which is why he uses the different terms. He asserts that there wouldn't be anything significant unless it's Urashiki. Well, yeah, a portent of the Otsutsuki's arrivals would be pretty fucking significant, but Sage just asserts that it's not significant, baselessly. The best you could do here is invoke an ad hoc explanation to make some unsupported reason. It's an omen of some kind as to why a random comet dashing across the sky would signify anything about the Otsutsuki's arrival. really focus on and meditate for a second on the type of language that is being used there. I didn't invoke an ad hoc explanation, right? I did better than that. I provided a thorough explanation that is context sensitive and actually demonstrates the issues with the initial point. It's not unsupported, and it's not made up. It's an analysis of the context. Also, dismissing it as an omen of some kind, lol. Saying of some kind and saying lol doesn't dismiss the fact that it is actually an omen. People seem to think that just using a mocking tone in response to something somehow dismisses it or defeats it. It just reveals the lack of interest in actually addressing the problem, right? As to why a random comment, again, this language random just deflects from the actual engagement with the subject matter. Dashing across the sky would signify anything but the Otsutsuki's arrival. Again, a lack of curiosity in terms of investigating what this event actually is. How is it connected to the Otsutsuki? I would be happy to explain. Why does it signify their arrival? I'd be happy to explain, etc. When was this astrological clock introduced? I'd be happy to explain, right? The problem here isn't whether he and I disagree or which one of us has the correct perspective or anything like that, per se. The problem is that at no point in this exchange did Sage actually acknowledge that he cut out context from the clips. He didn't show the full scene. He invented a term, and he smeared it together with these other terms, thus distorting the meaning and leading to misinformation, right? He spliced together multiple clips and cut out the tails and the heads and Frankenstein them together with this bullshit invented term that doesn't fit in order to clear the point. And when I bring this up, when I say, hey, this isn't correct, not even talking to him, by the way, just trying to help one of his other viewers understand this better, it becomes about me. The best you can do is make up some shit that's unsupported, LOL, it's a random, how's it connected, more questions, parsimony this, parsimony that, doesn't actually advance the conversation. And this is what we should be aware of. At the end of the day, we can disagree about whatever. I don't really care if Foxy's beams are the speed of light or not. I don't really care. I don't lose sleep over whether or not Urashiki, the anime-only character, is literally the speed of light or not. It doesn't really keep me up at night. What does keep me up at night, what does frustrate me, and what I do want to try to solve is, when you actually try to connect with somebody about something like this, exchange this information, and just point out that there's just a few things missing, that there's a deeper, richer cultural context, that there's more to it, and that we could all benefit from diving into that together. We could all understand things better together. And the response I get is nah, you can't do it. It's just random. It's just stupid. LOL. Why would it? It's more complicated. You're fucking lost. The horse has been led to the water. We will see if it drinks or not. I'm sure you all have your own predictions. Perhaps you can look to your own comments for the portents there. Yes, hello, Wakitaki, Ood/Kamui, I hope you are doing well. I am going to hydrate, and then I am going to, I just got that, I was looking at that, the whale. Then I am down. I've been checking the chat in your server to see if you guys hopped on, had started streaming. I'm basically ready to jump on at any point, so I am going to wrap up my stream now. I'm going to hydrate, and then we can talk about pretty much whatever. I'm looking forward to it. Let me just catch up with people here. Slimy Orb says, Toneri talking about shouldering fate. That means he's a fate manipulator. Got you. Oh, yeah, exactly. He can, No, what you don't understand is that Boruto is going to be shouldering the fate. So Boruto can literally put the concept of fate on his shoulders, so he can carry concepts physically, so he's boundless, obviously. I'm the, I've been downplaying him so hard, I didn't realize that he could carry, philosophical concepts on his back, but I think we've demonstrated that now together, huh? So he needs to get his son. No, he's perfect in the pale incarnation that he is. Don't change him. I can fix him and nobody else gets to. I think the difference is that they're in the atmosphere or not. Yes, that's very true. But there's, I think, a little bit more to comets versus meteors, which we can talk about later. But yeah, difference between meteors and meteorites, I think, is whether or not they're in the sky, right? But sorry, I can fact check us there. If I have a picture for you from my astrophotography stuff, I can go through into the chat. Yes, please. I would love to also just chat with you about this stuff in general and get your insight before Sunday if you would like to share. Orb says, Toneri, you can see really far just to watch what's on Earth, and also the light would have to be moving faster than light speed to reach the moon. Yeah, so the light itself doesn't have to be moving at the speed of light necessarily, faster than light necessarily, but Urashiki would have to be moving massively faster than the speed of light if he were actually entering and exiting the fucking constellations that fast. And in order to, since he's so much smaller than the stars, in order to actually be like, I looked this up, and like the closest star to us in the Cancer constellation is like 40 light years away or something. So if it actually is that star, like Sage I think made the argument last year that like we could lowball it by using that value or something like that. So let's just lowball it and say that it's 40 light years away. For Urashiki to produce a light that was that much brighter than the star that he is much smaller than, he would have to be outputting a massive amount of energy. He'd basically have to be like a fucking quasar, but only for an extremely brief amount of time. And that would then, I guess, like create this massive flash, but the flash didn't do any damage to the stars around it, even though it would probably be way bigger than it, or throw anything off its orbit, or have any other tangible effect. And also, this would have happened 40 fucking years ago. So what this would mean is that Toneri looks up at the sky, he sees Urashiki streaking across 40 fucking years ago. Urashiki generates this massive fucking cataclysmic supernova that lasts a fraction, like a second, but does no damage to anything around it that's discernible, and then just disappears and fucks off and flies away for 40 years before then turning around and coming back to Earth. Which, by the way, I tried to do some like general math on this. Like, if we assume that that about 20 years passed between the end of Boruto and the beginning of, the end of Naruto and the beginning of Boruto, this would mean that, like, the only reason Urashiki is even looking for motherfucking the Toneri on the moon is because Momoshiki and Kinshiki gave him that mission, and they gave him that mission specifically because Kinshiki detected a massive anomaly in the space curvature or whatever, which people say was in order to get Naruto to Universal or whatever. They say it was Naruto. It was coming from him. So 40 years ago, Urashiki somehow already was given the mission to go search for the cause of the thing that hadn't happened yet and wouldn't happen for another 20 years, even though he already knew where it was coming from because they knew it was Kaguya's planet and had the ability to portal directly there. So 40 years ahead of time, he streaks across the sky like a fucking asshole, launches a massive, useless supernova, disappears, does fuck all for 40 years. Toneri sees this and he's like, oh yeah, I knew that fucking 40 years ago Urashiki was gonna do that specifically. I recognize it as him, specifically a person, but I'm going to call it a comet because he's technically a celestial body, and since I'll call him a celestial person later on, celestial being, I can actually people will understand that I'm just like referring to the same thing, obviously, right? It's just like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not being parsimonious enough because I am actually like appealing to the literal cultural astronomical context, right? I'm the one who's fucking up and making things too complicated. Really, Sage? Really? Come on, buddy. Anyway, I should get going. I don't want to keep the walkie-talkie folks waiting too long. My sister was playing Rhythm Heaven. Oh, sweet. And the rhythm changed in my mid-song, and all I could hear downstairs was, yo! Most aggravating tone, so I can only imagine she lost. That's awesome. Hearing the singers start singing faster. Yeah. I want to check that out for sure. Supernova refuses to elaborate, leaves, returns 40 years later, captures Toneri. Yeah, I mean, like, it is a pretty decent flex. I can't lie. All right. Thank you guys. This has been super fun. I appreciate you all. Thank you for connecting with me and supporting me and enabling me, let's be honest. Hope you have a great night. If you are interested, please consider checking out the Walkie Talkie podcast. I like those guys. They're awesome, and I'm looking forward to talking about them soon. And so talking to them soon. So Walkie Talkie podcast. It's actually right here. I didn't even need to do this. I could have just clicked on that. Go check these people out. I will probably be talking to them in 5 minutes on stream. Okay.